You don't want to break that camera. Can you hear you?
Yeah.
All right, is everybody ready to get started? Thanks everyone for being here for our work session. And so let's just quickly review the agenda and see if there's any questions folks have about any items on the agenda. We're going to start off with the polarity training that Lisa's going to be the presenter on. Following that, we are going to have some updates on our energy initiatives, and Clint, Shepard, and Greg Israel, and Jeremiah LeRoy will all be presenting in that section. Take a break after that, and following the break, we'll dive into the budget planning overview for FY19. Diane Price, Autumn Livers, and Matt Evans are going to help us with that, and then we'll have the IT department overview. And we're going to try to finish that faster than we have outlined on this. So how much, Mandy, how much time do we need to take off? When do we want to be done with the IT presentation? By?
I think probably we hope to be done at least 15 or 20 minutes early,
Okay.
so we set up.
Right, so about 3:45. So if we could complete each of these, you know, about 5 minutes early, that would put us on track to do that. So that's what we're going to try to do. Any questions about anything on the agenda? All right, terrific. Well, Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off.
I'll put it on fast forward.
All right.
So, if you think about it, when you're in school, a lot of times we're taught things like 2 + 2 is 4. The President of the United States in 1941 was. There's pure answers to questions that we have, and we're reinforced in class when we can come up with an answer, right? And schools aren't really set up to address situations when there isn't a clear answer. And the things that you all deal with as commissioners oftentimes are those very situations where there isn't always a clear answer, that you're oftentimes holding two interdependent values in your hands that are both important, and you're trying to manage to the upsides of those values. So a lot of times people will come to you because of property reevaluations, for example, like in an area of zoning things, and you want to be able to hold that individual's concerns and what they're trying to do with their property, but you also have to hold, on the other hand, the greater concerns of the community. And neither one is better. You're trying to manage to the upside of both of those, right? So those are called polarities, and there's a whole science of how you manage in polarities. And we don't really have time to dive into it deeply today, but what I'm hoping we'll leave today with is an understanding of how to identify, oh, that's a polarity I'm working with, because your tactic and how you deal with a polarity changes, because you're not going to have a right answer. You're going to try and manage the polarity. And so I thought the easiest way to do this, I apologize, I know people don't like to do exercises, but I actually think would be very helpful for us. You would, I know. I'm just wondering, how many, I'll do it this way, how many of you, raise your hands, how many of you prefer stability? We're talking about stability versus change. So on a continuum, how many people prefer stability? It's their handedness, they would prefer stability. Thank you, Commissioner Belcher. Anyone else? Fryer? Commissioner Fryer, anyone else? And how many people prefer change? They run toward change.
This is a polarity for me because I'm kind of caught in between.
And that could be true, but usually we have like a handedness, but something and some polarities speak more to us than others. So the point is that we have Well, we don't. So we have people, it's good to just think in terms of which side, which handedness do you lead with, right? So I can talk about task versus relationship. How many of you are task driven versus emphasis more on relationship? So how many of you are task driven? Okay, and how many are relationship driven? Okay, so maybe you feel a stronger compunction for one of those. Centralized versus decentralized. So hierarchical versus participatory is another way to look at that. Or planning versus execution. Or individual versus team. Or short-term versus long-term. So these are just different polarities that exist in the world. And what's important to realize is that generally your handedness is where you're going to want to hold onto the pole because you see the benefits of that, right? So for me, I tend to love change. I run toward change. I remember there was an exercise once where people had to draw a picture of change, and mine was blue sky and clouds and light, and everybody else's was storm clouds and scary things. And it was the first time in my life I was shocked that change wasn't something that people ran toward. But so if I asked you to list the positives of change, what would you list as those positives?
Moving forward.
Moving forward.
Fix what's not working.
Personal growth.
Personal growth.
Yeah.
Why do we embrace change? Other
Making
reasons.
things better.
Make things better. So if we had more time, we would continue on these things. I mean, creativity, innovation are all driven by change, right? And when we come over to stability, what are the positives of stability? Why do we like stability?
Continuity.
Continuity.
I don't know if I'm saying this right, but you can build on that. It's not going to move.
So it's
It's a foundation.
there's a foundation, exactly.
Structure.
Structure. So again, we can fill these out, but you get the picture that there's positives of stability, right? And when we talk with staff, oftentimes when we're introducing a new idea that we think is great, we'll feel resistance from staff. And the reason why we feel resistance is they want to know what's expected of them. They want continuity. They want that structure. They want that foundation. And they're afraid of losing that, right? So if we come over here to the negatives of change, some of the negatives of change are, you guys were supposed to be up in the quadrants, but I
Do you
don't
want us
stress
to
you.
stand up?
No, it's all good. So change, the negatives are, when you have too much change, what happens?
Some of the results are yes.
Okay, results
There'll
can be a
be
yes.
no inefficiency.
Undo what's been good.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it may not be broken. Stress.
We're talking this.
All right, what did you say?
Stress.
Stress. Okay, so we were able to come up with a lot of good reasons to avoid change, weren't we? Right? So these are all the negatives of change. What are the negatives of stability over time?
Inequity.
Inequity. Huh. Tell me what.
Keeping, for instance, inequity in our community, keeping things as they are instead of pursuing the idea of giving grants, Isaac Coleman.
So, yes, got it.
Yeah.
Other?
Antiquated laws.
Antiquated laws, and kind of behind antiquated laws would be fixed mindset as well.
Dogma. It's a revolution.
Get ready to preach.
Would anyone else like to share?
Look, okay, so this is a negative of.
Of negative of stability.
Same old
So
same.
too much stability is the same.
Boring.
Boring. And what's the extreme of boring?
I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
Dogma.
gonna move on, they're not gonna stick around in place, I guess.
So again, we could go on and on and on, but when stability gets too entrenched, stability becomes stagnation, right? Stability becomes no growth, and it's absolute extreme, it becomes death, right? And actually chaos in its actual extreme can become no life in the ordered process that it needs to be. So what happens in a polarity is that oftentimes, and this is gonna break, you find, yep, there you go.
See, I told you it was bad.
Hang on. Just tighten that up.
A little rough on the people.
Pull it down.
I got it. Let's see, that's good. If you do this exercise in the training, you literally have people move through these quadrants, because what happens is when somebody's fighting change, the reason why they're fighting change and they're dragging their heels and digging in is because they're really worried about this happening. They're fighting against, they're pulling against having stress, uncomfortableness, chaos, undoing what is good. They're saying, wait a minute, there's some good things here we don't want to lose, right? Likewise, if you've got someone on change and they're pulling to get things moving, they're saying, hey, I'm worried about getting stagnated. I'm worried about us losing our opportunity to move forward, right? Is one of them better than the other? No, they're not. And good management comes from, usually what happens is when you're in a bad situation, things have gone way south. And so you're at the bad end of too much stability, okay? Things are not moving, it's stagnant. What's the most typical knee-jerk thing you're gonna do?
Do something precipitously.
You're gonna run over here and say, man, we need change. Things are really bad, we gotta get on the change wagon, right? And then what happens when you start doing change and you're just changing, you slip down into here. And all of a sudden you're in chaos, right? And then what happens is you say, wait a minute, too much change, too much stress, we need stability. And you come running over here. Is that a dynamic that's fruitful for people? It's not, but it is oftentimes what happens. And if you don't understand you're in a polarity, what you're going to try and do is when you're in that bad thing where you're saying, man, it's too chaotic, you're going to run toward an answer when it's not, that is not the answer. The answer is to manage the polarity. And the way that you manage the polarity is you list out all the positives that stability brings. And you list out all the positives that change brings. And you list out all the, these are positives, I should do it this way. And you list out all the negatives of stability and all the negatives of change. And then you try and manage to the upsides and grab as many of those, minimizing the negatives and grabbing the upsides and maximizing those and minimizing the negatives, okay? And you also try and figure out what are the early warning signs that we're slipping down into the negative so we can pay attention, right? So why am I'm talking about polarities today is because we got a sheet here. We're making some hard corrections right now. We've talked about making hard corrections. And we're trying to manage in polarities right now. And so what we have to guard against is making such hard corrections that we end up in the quadrant that we don't want to be in, right? So we have to be mindful that we're being really careful to understand what the positives are in the polarity that we're trying to manage, and then understanding what the downsides are. So when you think about empowering versus control, we're moving much more to control as we need to, but we do need to think about how do we manage in a way that we don't lose the upsides of what it means to allow people to be empowered and to do things. So it's a dance that we have to do. When I think about organization-focused versus community or taxpayer-focused, again, that's a polarity where you don't want to be swinging too hard in one direction, but you want to manage to the upside. We are a county that did a whole lot of building, which tends to be more longer-term commitments, and we're swinging toward more like short-term right now, what's important to us. And again, we want to make sure that we manage in a way that we get the positives as well as minimize those negatives. So it's helpful if you can recognize what a polarity is and then actually map them out, right? So it's a structured process for going through, and really, literally, there's an exercise you can do where you walk into the quadrants in small groups and you outline everything that's positive about one pole, everything positive about the other, negative and negative, and then talk through how are you going to manage in a way that you're really clear about when you're tipping into negative territory. So you don't get that knee-jerk pendulum swing to the opposite pole, which isn't helpful. And to also open your ears to understand that when people are pulling against the other pole, they're doing it for a good reason. There are things that they want to hold on to that are important, right? That they're afraid of, they want to hold on to, and things they're afraid of. And so you need to pay attention. That's where these varied perspectives of the commissioners are so important, because you oftentimes are going to be valuing one pole over another. That's good. That means we can listen and learn from each other, and again, manage to those upsides. So I believe, I came under time.
Yeah, you're doing great.
I am very happy to entertain questions and again, to help with me.
So, just really briefly, one of the best things that the county did was with animals. A very loud, strong group of folks coming from all different aspects. There was a small fraction that wanted that, the majority wanted that. The turmoil was 60 tons of dead animals going to the landfill. So what happened was, as the groups evolved, they saw the strength of the partnership the county had with Ashley Humane and also with the Humane Alliance. So they did 3 prongs. They changed the ordinance, but kept the continuity of these 2 great organizations. They worked with county leadership, and then they set this crazy goal of a countdown to 0. No more dogs would be euthanized. That went crazy, meeting that goal when we said that. But
And that's your greatest hope right here.
Right.
That you want to manage towards.
yes, so, but it was such a good illustration to me of keeping the old, listening to people, seeing what people were most motivated by. You couldn't have the extreme over here, but coming to the middle and listening, and now we don't euthanize animals the way.
That's a great example. Listening to the kids the other day on the energy issues, again, is another probably
Right.
polarity that we're managing in, that we should, again, try and manage the upsides and minimize the downsides. When I hear people talk about, again, reevals or the tax, the zoning things, to me, that's a huge polarity. It's individual interest versus community interest. You guys deal with those constantly, and it really can help. The more you can have discussion that outlines those positives, you really want to try and find solutions that are going to maximize these and minimize the negatives. And there are structured ways that you can do that, like through a work session or something.
And don't you think at the core of it is empathy? Because if you're empathetic, you're going to be listening.
I think absolutely that it caused you, in order to manage a polarity, you have to have deep listening, because you have to get past your own bias for one side of the pole or the other, and get past your own fears of what you're trying to guard against, so you can listen to other people. But I think when you can name it as a polarity, it allows you to kind of take that fear out of it and just to step back from it and say, this is something we can manage if we can just clearly articulate it.
I think the other thing too is, particularly when you're dealing with boards, whether it be a governmental board or whether it be a board of a large company, and you have a mix of people that were chosen for that board. And if they fall in the stability range, it doesn't mean that they're in the stability range because they know how to do this over here. They didn't get to that point without understanding that they would embrace change, but slower. Take a breath. And so if something for us is longer term, and we try to deal with it, someone that has a stability wired that way, then what's going to happen is you can't change years and years and years and years and wait so long to wire. So you've just got to talk through it. It just will take longer.
It's gonna take longer, but that perspective is extremely valuable, right? So somebody who has that stability perspective, it's very valuable to the process. Mandy and I tend to hang out on the change pole at times, and so it's really important to have people pushing against us to say, you know, here's why it's important to think about this other side of it. Here's what we want to safeguard against losing. So, didn't mean to out you.
I want you. Jim's the one who keeps throwing up polls.
Well, actually, Mandy usually does end up being the balancing force in all of it, but I tend to push on this side. That's my handedness. But I learned enough to bring people around me to balance me out, right? So that I do pay attention to those other things. Jasmine,
The list that was on the other side of that whiteboard, so you would use any of those pairs?
Right, there's a whole, I mean, there's many, many different regularities. And I gave you the sheet that's got some of them on it. You right now that I think are more relevant as far as the commissioners at this point. It's on the handout, this one I gave you guys.
Oh, these ones, okay, yeah. But these are other ones.
These are other polarities that people have and have used. It's all Barry Johnson is the one who developed this concept, and I'm happy to provide you with more resources on it. But it's called Polarity Management, and it's Barry Johnson.
Thanks.
And when you work in complex, messy systems, again, if you can say, oh, this is the polarity I'm dealing with, you tend to be able to manage in a much more effective way. Any other questions or comments?
I just more or less have an update. Going back to our last meeting, I think exactly what we're talking about is on taking one person and putting something on the board. In the last 2 weeks, I was sharing with a couple of commissioners of how many people have been negative about that we should not have done that. I thought we talked through it enough, but then after I've explained in my side, because I'm on the change side, I like it. And people, hey, our chairs should be able to put that on. But then when I explained, you know, I was doing it, I voted the other way because of the pressure of being put on one person from someone. Make sense?
I hear you.
Yeah. So, I mean.
Listening to you.
I mean,
Well done, Brian.
Thank you.
I had a lot of.
But it actually, in a way that shows you the tension of a polarity, right? Because there isn't necessarily a right answer in that, right? Those are interdependent values.
And I guess the main thing is listening would have been the key thing if we would all listen.
One, I think sometimes when people have, this is not about that at all, but when people have a volatile reaction to something, it's typically not over what's at hand, it's something not related, and also it's easy for people to trip over little things and ignore them longer.
And oftentimes polarities are intertwined with other polarities. So stability versus change is oftentimes intertwined with an issue.
Right.
So you have people who want stability and the one thing, and you have people that want change in the other thing. So it can get messy, but again, just untangling some of that allows you, again, to take some of the emotion out of it, step back and bring a process that allows you to manage through it better.
But you can like sustainability. But then you can look at the change side to see what's going to be better and how you work. That's what I look at.
That's exactly what you hope to do, and you hope to articulate what are those positives. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right. Perfect time. Let's keep moving and get the updates on the energy initiatives.
So my name is Jeremiah Leroy, for those of you who haven't actually met me in person yet. I run the sustainability office for the county. so that you don't have to listen to me talk the entire time. We've broken this up into a couple of chunks. We're going to do some internal facilities overview, some overview of the school systems, and then some basically just updates on what the Sustainability Office has been up to and the initiatives that we've been moving forward with. So we're going to start with our internal facilities overview. Clint Shepard, our General Services Director, is going to go ahead and go over that with you. And then we'll move on to Greg Israel to talk about the school systems. And then I will give you the update on the Sustainability Office. So we'll go from there.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. Hope everybody's doing well. So thanks, Jeremiah, for the introduction. So before we dive into the energy and missions related to our facilities, I just wanted to take a moment to start back at ground zero and remind everybody of what actually facilities encompass. Currently, we have 84 facilities controlled by Buncombe County. That's soon to be 86 with Cox Avenue coming online, the deck and the building addition. Right now, that's 1.71 million square feet, excuse me, which is about 30 football fields. And that will be, that'll push us over the 2 million square foot mark once those buildings are transferred to us. With 2016 utility costs of $1.87 or 1.87 million and an average utility cost of $1.10.
Back it up, I'm sorry. I don't want to get hung up on this. What did you say the 1.87 was?
The utility costs for 2016.
Okay.
That's gas and electric.
Gas, electric, and water.
That includes water.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and then the average utility cost is that cost divided by our square footage.
Do we have it without water?
I'm sorry?
Do we have it without water?
We do, and I can get that for you.
Great.
So as a reminder, we approved, the board approved 9 measures in 2014 for us to implement, and that was a batch of 2 years worth of measures, which gives us that 4%, 2% annually for those 2 years. And these are those 9 measures just at a glance. So you'll have some fixtures, some thermostat work, some HVAC work, vending machine controls, computer controls, some clothes washers at the detention center we changed out, and a solar heating system, existing system that we had at 40 Cox we did some work on. So that was that 4% goal, and we'll see in subsequent slides that actually come in at over 10% achieved. That achievement can also be attributed to factors such as rate changes and weather, so just keep that in mind. So here, looking at energy intensity, that's just a way to sort of look at things at a square foot level, which is a kVt per square foot. 2014, the measures were approved. We implemented those beginning in 2014 into 15, and then you start to see the reduction in energy intensity, which reflects those measures that we implemented and other slight factors. And putting that into emissions terms, again, you can see the graph and how it coincides with energy intensity. In 2014, they were approved and we started implementing those. 2015, a reduction was achieved, 16, the same, and then the part of this graph that you have not saw since the March meeting is the 2017 reduction. So 3 years, a 6% minimum goal, and we're about a little over 21% reduction, which is about 3,600 metric tons of carbon emissions. Other factors that just off the cuff that might be contributed to the 11.4 rather than the 2% minimum, we did have a mild winter. 200 College Street, this building, LEDs, we were able to outfit this building to LEDs. Courts Complex LEDs, we outfitted in a portion of the building and a HVAC addition at the existing courthouse. And those 2 measures that were approved for implementation in this fiscal year, exterior lighting, we're upfitting all of our exterior lighting to LEDs, and we're changing out a significant portion of our HVAC system, so smaller split system units, the outdoor units, the more efficient units. To date, LEDs, we're at a 70,000 kilowatt hour reduction, which is approximately a $4,200 annual savings in our utilities, and a 4.5-year payback on that. If you equate that to emissions terminology, that's 53 metric tons of carbon emissions, or almost 0.5% of reduction that we've achieved thus far since July 1. The energy efficient HVAC units, obviously the best time to work on those is not in extreme weather months. You try to do that during transition months, so we're just now getting our feet wet with changing out those units. We're focusing on those units that have the old outdated refrigerant, so that gives us two birds with one stone, so to speak. We're getting rid of the expensive refrigerant and replacing those units with the less expensive refrigerant and gaining some energy savings on top of that. So that's just a brief update of facilities. Be happy to take any questions.
The HVAC units that we use, do they have zero ratings or?
They do. Yes, sir.
So,
So,
do we know where we're going? Are these 20 SEER?
yeah, so a dated unit that is, if that it's at its replacement life, will be at a 10 to 12 SEER, and you have efficiency options of 16 to even 18 SEER. We're just we're using each facility to assess which one we go with. Either way, we're going to gain efficiencies there.
The only thing I saw that would be good, Stone or whoever would put it in here, would be where you showed the reason I asked about the $1.87, the $1.10. It's because I did the math on my house real quick.
Sure.
My house was 70 cents
Mm-hmm.
with upgraded SEER, no, so, or
Sure.
high efficiency, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
recently. So as the CO2 emissions show that savings, it'd be good to show the cost per square foot in these buildings too. Is that going down? Are we, is that improving? Are we paying less on our power bills, for example? It's a big motivator for me at home.
Sure, so we do have a graph that, and I can provide that graph, that is the counterpart to this graph. This is just merely energy intensity, but we also have a coinciding graph that is actually cost per square foot that we can provide as well.
Clint,
Yes, sir.
in implementation of this, some of this was not implemented in 2004. Some of it we picked up on since then, as far as the LED in the schools here.
Sure.
In the whole package. So we're gaining without implementing. As things get better, as far as products, energy products, that we're absolutely gaining in that process. 11% reduction, that's after, almost after a 3-year period, that we haven't added anything to the original deal, except basically you did the lights in these buildings and stuff, so. We're gaining without actually implementing, right?
Well, we had some bleed over from the original batch of 9 measures, those first 2 years. We did have some bleed over into FY17. But yes, to answer your question, I've said before that just the simple fact of pursuing maintenance efforts, the changes in technology, you gain efficiencies just by doing business as a maintenance department. Again, I can't guarantee that 2% minimum would be met. You do have some other factors that weather for one, rate changes for another, that it's hard to say that you could achieve that 2%. It's hard to put a number on that, but just the simple fact of doing business as a maintenance department, you'll gain some efficiencies there, and that contributes to that 11.4%.
Well, you're going to continue to try to do things, implement things to save the county, weathering and the whole package, so that's basically what you call maintenance.
Sure. Yeah, it's in my best interest to keep a job, to perform maintenance, so. So thankfully, you know, just with LEDs, it's really stupid not to do it now that the cost and technology is to that competitive point.
We've gone from crooked bulbs to LEDs.
Yeah, yeah.
Things keep changing.
Questions? Clint, one question. When the Cox Avenue building comes online, and it's a big building, right? So it's gonna be a lot of new square footage to heat. And it's a new building, so it'll probably be pretty good on like a per square foot basis, but it is a big new building.
Yeah,
So,
there's still an issue.
so when that happens, in terms of kind of benchmarking the overall emissions reduction, that's gonna be, you know, that's kind of working in the other direction.
Sure.
Right? So just kind of thinking ahead, we should just be aware that that's more square footage to heat and light and all that stuff, even though it's gonna be probably a pretty good building on a per square foot basis.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The square footage sort of speaks for itself. We're utilizing existing meters, best I recall, on that facility. So I was concerned that we was going to have that upshot in existing meters, but then I got thinking, well, we've got existing square footage to add to that. So yeah, what I found out in the past 9 years of employment, we're a dynamic municipality, right? You know, we're fluctuating in square footage. So the philosophy that we came up in tracking this goal, you know, we've set a baseline, and we drew the line with the batch of facilities when this ball was hiked and we were tasked with doing this. So we use that baseline to track these measures, and any buildings that are subtracted, we don't allow for, and any buildings that are added, we take that into consideration as well.
Any other questions? All right, thanks. Thanks, Clint.
All right, I'm here today to talk to you about energy initiatives in our school system. And it's been almost a year ago now, we got together and formed this loose alliance, I guess you would say, between Hvac, Buncombe County Schools, and Nashville City Schools. And what we did, we got together and collaborated on means and methods for energy reduction. And it was interesting to me that the conversation, and there was a room of people about this side, didn't center that much on projects as it did on what I would call the data side of it. How did you get this grant? How do you track this measure? So there was a lot of that talked about. And out of that meeting, we formed an alliance with Waste Reduction Partners, and Hvac and Nashville City Schools had level 1 ASHRAE audits performed on their campuses. So Hvac did 26 facilities, about 900,000 square feet, and Nashville City Schools did 8 facilities for a little over 800,000 square feet. And in the Asheville school system right now, their biggest project they've got going is an LED initiative. They're changing out in their schools. And they have 4 schools complete, which is about 45% of their inventory. And by spring of 2018, they'll be complete with the LED change-out on their campuses. Now, this is not every fixture in the school system. This is the troffers like you see overhead. That's the easiest thing to grab first, and that's what Duke Energy's interested in helping with right now. Other projects that Asheville school system has going on is the Montford North Star Academy. We've had a complete HVAC upgrade there, new fan core units, new chiller, new building controls, and a new fresh air system for the school. There's also been a new roof put on there, so you get insulation upgrades. All of these things work together to reduce energy usage. At Asheville High School, as far as energy initiatives, primarily it would center around the roof work that's being done across the campus pretty much. We're going to pick up those insulation factors there. And we're also doing an envelope renovation. And it's key, even if you think about water infiltration through that rock, somehow that water's got to be dealt with. It's either through the evaporation process, through an HVAC system. Somehow it's using energy to get rid of that. So just by sealing up that building, we're saving energy doing Jones School, we've got a new roof system across the Jones campus. And there again, when you put in a new roof now, you bring it up to an R30 value. And so you're picking up a lot of savings there. Buncombe County Schools. Buncombe County has a very large LED project going on. In the Irwin district, they completed 13 buildings, including the maintenance building and administrative services building, and they have changed out 12,000 light fixtures thus far. Beginning this month in the Robertson district, 6 more schools will be begin, and they'll change out 8,000 fixtures in those, looking for completion by June of 18. Starting in the spring of next year, the final phase of the LED changeout will be in the Inca district. 6 schools, approximately 8,100 light fixtures. Some of the other work going on there in the Buncombe County school system, under building controls, Johnson Elementary School has received a complete upgrade. It's automated logic, building controls. How do we use setbacks? How do we control the temperature of the building to get our best use out of it? Barnardsville Elementary, Black Mountain Elementary, Black Mountain Primary all received upgrades to their building control systems. HVAC equipment replaced. Hvac Creek Elementary received a new high-efficiency cooler, chiller. That's complete, and it also received a $25,000 rebate from Duke Energy on that project.
Can you go back to the light things, because, when is Owen scheduled?
Really don't know, to be honest with you. I can find out.
Because I know they haven't started yet, and I know there was some deadlines that have to be met.
They broke it up into 3 phases, into 3 groups, but I'm not sure which one I would follow. So energy efficiency projects, North Buncombe is getting a new chiller. West Buncombe Elementary is receiving an entire HVAC system upgrade. And the administrative services building is getting a new boiler, switchgear, and generator. All of those are in the 18 calendar year. Energy efficient projects, Irwin High School, AC Reynolds High School are each receiving a solar hot water system. That's going to aid the kitchen in hot water use. Valley Springs Middle, in October, completed in October of 17, did an auditorium LED upfit. And that's significant because you can come in this room and change these lights out real easy. But when you work in a setting like an auditorium, where you have lighting controls and has to be specific for a project, that's no small undertaking. Lester Elementary and Weaverville Elementary both did media center LED retrofits. Same thing there, that's specialized lighting. So one of the things though that interests me the most about this, other energy conservation activities. And I put the word initiatives behind that when I was reading this. If you look at those first 3 under that, presentations to school classes, boards, and principals, energy assessments with using students to do these assessments, and outreach via social media and Buncombe County School System communication. That education that's going on right there is key to making this happen in the future. You know, why do kids put their seatbelts on? Because it was drilled into them when they were little. Don't ride without your seatbelt. So when you start at this age and start teaching this, then it sticks with them forever. Utility rate analysis and bill auditing. Real short story here. When I first came and took over utility rate analysis and bill auditing, this one bill kept popping into my mind. I couldn't tell where it was at. Got to looking at it. We've been paying a power bill on this studio suite on Walnut Street up there for years. We didn't even own the property. So, you know, the county been paying that bill. You know, you got to keep an eye on these things. School system is putting a lot of effort into their modular classrooms. That's something really hard to control as far as energy usage. Doing equipment inventories is great for long-range planning. They're on top of that, and they're updating their energy policy. The energy initiatives and that initiative is the ability to assess and initiate, look at the problem, initiate the solution. And the Buncombe County Schools has went off the charts on this one. They're miles ahead of everybody else on this. Hvac, we're taking the information we got from the energy audits, we're incorporating it into the capital projects plan that's upcoming. And so on this first round of projects, you'll see quite a few LED lighting change-outs on it and a lot of envelope restoration. I'll take any questions you have.
Greg, what is the school do, energy manager? The create and advertise energy dashboard, the school dude's energy manager?
Yeah,
Is
it's
it-
software.
Just
School
curious,
Dude is a software.
Who is the school dude? The school dude?
Well, our program is Facility Dude.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're the dude suite of software.
All right.
It used to be called Act 2000, and that
Wasn't fun enough?
wasn't fun enough anymore.
Yeah.
Alicia Reardon's doing a great job in county schools. I really, I don't have a dog in this fight, so to say, but when they were collaborating a year ago, there was a lot going on. That has kind of, water settled now. I think I pushed to put that group back together, probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Thanks, folks.
Craig. Got more info or?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna keep you guys here for a while. Okay, so, Office of Sustainability, exciting topic. It's a new initiative here in Buncombe County. It's been in existence since July 1st, so we've had a little bit of time to get a lot of work done. So, just as a brief overview, sustainability serves as a resource and an advocate for environmental sustainability in Buncombe County. Our mission is to foster a culture of sustainability throughout the county's operations and support sustainability initiatives both within Buncombe County and in the general community at large. So the first slide I'm going to go to is Sustainability Office responsibilities within Buncombe County facilities. I have one major goal when it comes to Buncombe County facilities, and that is to stay out of Clint's way. I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but what I mean by that is we have a tremendous staff in general services that does a great job. And Clint sort of alluded to this proactive approach they have towards maintenance, which by its very nature helps us become more energy efficient. So my job is not to make his job harder, it's just to let him do his thing because they're doing a great job. We do work together, we do, we talk to each other, we keep each other informed, we spitball ideas together in terms of, where we might go next with some energy efficiency initiatives. Some of the things that I've wanted to do is just to take some work off of his plate as well. And a couple of those things are handling the application process for Duke Energy rebates and incentives. It's a pretty straightforward process, but it was something that sort of fell by the wayside and wasn't getting done as projects were getting implemented. So just in the time that I've been doing this, we've gotten about $12,000 in rebates, additional rebates from Duke. That does not include built-in rebates. That's so when we buy lighting, a lot of times we'll get the vendor to get the Duke rebate up front, so that it just reduces the total cost. That $12,000 is additional rebates on top of that. In addition, we've sort of renewed the use of the Energy Savings Investment Fund. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but the basic gist of it is when we do an energy savings initiative, like the LED retrofit in this building, for example, we can calculate what the potential energy savings are from that project. So if this building, for example, saves us $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year in energy, at the end of the year, we will take that money out of the utility budget and then put it back into the community, to the Energy Reinvestment Fund. So it's self-sustaining, and as we continue to do projects, we have money to do more projects. So it was something that wasn't really being kept up with because we had this generator program that was helping fund it, which, long story, but air quality emissions changed and that program no longer exists. So we've had to be more creative in going out and calculating our energy savings initiatives. In FY18, we've got approximately 27,000 And based on the projects that we've done this year, we expect to have about $40,000 in savings go back to that energy reinvestment fund in 2019.
So how much money is in that fund now?
It's about $55,000. And again, that's money we use to do more projects. So it was at about $80,000. We just did an LED retrofit, or we're in the process of doing an LED retrofit at 356 Biltmore. That's why it's dropped down a little bit, but that, again, will get sort of reinvigorated at the end of the year and be back up to that $80,000 to $90,000 range. So that's where it's been pretty steady around that level of funding from year to year. So we also have the Community Clean Energy Fund, which you guys invested in, again, starting July 1. We've got this pool of money to go out and do community clean energy work. And what we thought was, okay, where do we get started? You know, how do we do this? What's the first sort of jumping off point? And we start, in my mind, by just gathering the data. And what I mean by gathering the data is what projects are out there for us to invest in. And the way we get that information is by doing energy audits, and energy audits of both public and community facilities. So in our conversations on how to get this thing going, there were a couple of really natural jumping off points for us, one of which was the fire districts. They're taxpayer-funded facilities, and they enjoy a great deal of community support. And you know, there's 20 fire districts with a lot of different buildings, over 250,000 square feet. So we have started the process of doing energy audits for all of our fire districts. So those started with a contract with Waste Reduction Partners in August. They are currently underway. We expect that they're probably going to be underway until about first quarter of next year. Again, it's 20 districts plus a few substations. It's a lot of buildings to audit, so it's taking several months to do all of it. So the fire districts were our first jumping off point for doing energy audits. The next sort of logical step for us was our community funding partners. As you guys know, we go through a process every year where a lot of local nonprofits will submit essentially grant applications to us, and we go through the process of funding them. Well, that also means we've got an established relationship with these organizations, so it's an easy sort of foot in the door for us to say, hey, we want to come and audit your facilities. So we're working with a bunch of these community partners. This is just sort of the initial list: YWCA, Sandy Bush Community Center, Physical Legal, YMI, ABCCM, are organizations that we're currently working with and doing energy audits of their facilities as well. That is by no means an exhaustive list of who we want to work with. That is just where we started. And we sort of had some initial criteria for who was going to be the easiest to get in the door. And that was, we looked at the size of the facility, the age of this facility, did they own their building versus, you know, leasing just a part of it. You know, just the sort of easiest foot in the door to get some of these energy audits done for these facilities. And of course, the whole point of this is to get these energy conservation measures. Once we get the results of these audits back, we will be able to evaluate and prioritize the energy projects that are out there for us to go out and fund. So that's the next step once these audits are complete.
Who's doing the audit?
So the Waste Reduction Partners are doing the audits of the fire departments. The audits of the community centers are being done by a company called Buncombe and Creed.
It wouldn't take me long to do an energy audit at the Sandy Bush Community.
It didn't take very long. We actually did it last week. And yeah, it's not as ripe for opportunity as some of the others, let's say.
Cost of the
I'm going to get to the cost of all of this in just a minute. I figured that would be a question. So, Buncombe and Creed is a local, they have a local engineering firm. We did a request for qualifications to get engineering firms to come in and submit qualifications to do the audits for us. And they were the top choice. So everything up to this point has been kind of commercial. We are also looking at residential. We are looking at doing some additional audits of mountain housing opportunities, older facilities. They've got some older facilities that, you know, frankly, they were built in the, you know, late 70s, early 80s, and they could really, they could at least use a looking at and see if there's a real potential opportunity there, because I think that's a real bang for your buck type of initiative. And again, we're looking at sign up for Duke programs at the time of lease. So what that is as a part of the Energy Innovation Task Force initiative, one of the sort of glaring needs in the community was that Duke Energy has all these programs for people that nobody seems to be aware of. The market penetration for them is very low. And so we're working currently through getting some of the default to be, like when you sign a lease with Mountain Housing Opportunity, you're opted into these big programs that will help save energy. And that would be the default position. You're able to opt out if you want to, but the default is that you're opted in. So we're working, once you get the lawyers involved, sorry Mike, it's gonna take a little while. But that's an initiative we're working on as well. In addition, also residential, we are contracting with Energy Savers Network. Energy Savers Network is sort of a new organization. And what they do is low-income residential energy efficiency. They focus on weatherization, air sealing, insulation, minor repairs. They identify people through various community agencies, Edwin Charities, any of the weatherization assistance program funding. The reason we really like Energy Savers Network and that we've decided to sort of work with them is it's a very, very cost-effective method of going in and weatherizing people's homes. Even with administrative costs, they can do most of their work for an average of about $300 per home. So it's very cost-effective. And this is sort of an opportunity as a proof of concept to see that this model really works and is effective.
Have they done any yet, or have any?
Yes. Well, they've been working in the community for a little over a year. We just contracted with them about a month ago. Got all of that put together. The money that we're going to be funding them with, they will be able to do about 80 homes. In addition, next bullet point here, to sort of broaden that scope a little bit, we've also applied for a grant opportunity from the Southeastern Sustainability Communities Fund. It's for $300,000 over 2 years. It's a very competitive grant opportunity. It's open to all local governments in the Southeast. I'm not allowed to publicly tell you whether or not we got the money. So one of the key elements that was brought up through the EITF programs group, the task force programs group, was that there was a real lack of continuity between weatherization programs in the area, between community action opportunities, Habitat for Humanity, and various other sort of, Energy Savers Network. There was a lack of that single point of entry for people to get into weatherization services. So for example, if someone were to go to community action opportunities to try and get their home weatherized, or try to get weatherization assistance money, but you have some home repair that needs to be done, you don't qualify for weatherization assistance money if you have a hole in your roof. So they think they got turned down, and that's that. Well, they don't realize that, Habitat for Humanity has a home repair program. We can get that done for you first, and then send you through the program. Basically, create this one-stop shop for energy efficiency and weatherization in Buncombe County, so that people don't fall through the cracks. Yes.
In that model, would the county be administering the one-stop shops or another?
It would be administered through the Greenbelt Alliance. Greenbelt Alliance is formerly the Western North Carolina Green Building Council.
Oh, gotcha.
So the county is simply the sort of the grantor and the manager of the grant. The program will be managed through Greenbelt Alliance. As a collaborative effort, it's Duke Energy, City of Asheville, Buncombe County, Community Action. Everybody's at the table for this. Because it was identified by these providers that we don't have a single entry point for this type of work. We don't have a unified intake process, so can we get all this together so that when people need these services, we not only can provide it for them, but we put them in the right place, in the right order, at the right time, to make sure that they get sort of a comprehensive, sort of whole home view of what they've done. So that is a January 1 start date for us. So nothing's under contract yet. Again, we're not allowed to really publicly talk about the funding yet. But let's just say we're very hopeful and positive that things are gonna go in our direction for this. Yes?
Let's back up to the Energy Savers Network.
Yes.
How do you select the homes?
There's a variety of ways that people can contact Energy Savers Network. They are referred through Evelyn, because that's where people tend to go for heating assistance funding. They are referred to through Community Action Opportunities, through Habitat for Humanity, basically all of the other service providers in town. They are also really ingrained in the faith community. So a lot of their referrals come from their churches. So and there's a variety of ways people can get to Energy Savers Network. And again, they're a fairly new organization, so we're still trying to get the word out on them, you know.
And how do they pick together the Energy Savers Network?
Really, they're the only ones that do what they do. At least that is a relatively new organization that has this type of model. They're a volunteer-based organization, which is why they're able to keep their costs so low. They basically only pay for materials. So when they go into a home, all they gotta do is go to Home Depot and spend $200 on materials, and they have volunteer labor that goes out and actually does the work. Yeah, that makes sense.
And what about mobile homes?
They do mobile homes. They absolutely do mobile homes. As a matter of fact, Brad Rouse is very passionate about doing mobile homes. The focus, however, on the community fund, the grant, will primarily be on homes, because that's just how they have asked us to do it. Sorry, you have a question?
Do we have any sense of the scope of need that's out there? I know we're talking about sustainability, of course, and
Sure.
I'm also thinking about affordable housing strategies, and
Sure.
one of those is people being able to stay in their homes. And maybe on a policy level, I think part of our task is thinking about the relationship between these issues. So anyway,
Yeah, well, I mean,
postscript to my
there
question.
absolutely
Yeah.
is there's a connection to all of this stuff. Because
Right.
At the end of the day, one of the things you're trying to do here is also decrease reliance on public assistance, right? Because we have a lot of people that go to Evelyn every year, and we don't really ask a lot of questions, we just gotta check for their heating bill, you know? This is an entry point for them, you know, we see these people every year. Instead of, you know, just defaulting, to let's just pay their bill for them and move on, then we get them into one of these programs,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And maybe we don't see them next year, or maybe if we do, the check is half as much,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever the case might be. I mean, part of the process here is to try and decrease that reliance on just public assistance for.
How many volunteers there?
It ebbs and flows, but on any given, like weekend when they do a work project, 10 to 15 will go out to do a given project. Obviously, one of the goals here is to market this in a way that helps that expand and grow that volunteer base.
I guess it's more following up on what Jasmine said. I think the need is vast.
It's absolutely,
And,
I couldn't agree more.
And I think the volunteers are a great strategy, but it's at one point,
Mhm.
when we put more dollars in it to, work with the volunteers, but also hire people, because to me, that seems like a small investment. Because
Mhm.
I think the volunteers are great, but I think the need is so extraordinary.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree. And again, I think that our initial investment in Energy Savers Network is really for the purposes to prove this concept. You know, this can work. We can do it, and it can be really cost effective and make a big difference in people's lives. Not just saving energy, but just making our homes more comfortable and efficient for the winter. I mean, we're getting into that time of year.
Well, and
This is
what
important.
Jasmine said, we want to be able to keep people in their homes. And,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that also has to.
I do know what you mean. Jim and I were saying, you know, we administer between $1.5, $1.9 million a year in heating assistance, federal heating assistance. So that's, you know, you want to think about, are you making improvements in the facilities, the
Right.
homes?
Mhm.
I mean, and that's great that we do that, but I can just never put Band-Aids, you know?
I do
Absolutely.
think Energy Savers is one of those organizations, much like we're investing in the Isaac Coleman, where you want to give lift to that kind of organization too.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think that what the type of work that they're doing tends to be relatively long-lasting work. It's not like you're gonna
I
have to
don't
go
know,
back
and
next year. and do the same
I
thing.
applaud these volunteers.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, to expand it so that, it's
Absolutely.
not all in the backs of volunteers.
Part of what this $300,000 will fund is paying for staff. And again, this is to build the concept out. And what we're looking at hopefully doing with this is we're working with Duke Energy on a lot of these projects as well. And Duke Energy has requested through the North Carolina Utilities Commission to create a program to buy back verified energy savings. So if we can go through this process and prove that we're saving money, we're saving 10% per home, et cetera, the number of kilowatt hours that we'll actually be able to save, they can buy back from us. And if we can do that, we can start to sort of refund these things perpetually.
So,
That's the idea.
I have to be really careful, Billy, here, y'all will have to keep me on task, because this is something I could run with all day.
Me too.
Okay,
Just
so-
next to each other.
So, and I want to make sure that you know that my comments are not directed towards you, it's towards this here. So when it comes to approving any of this, we got proof. We know that if you go into a 1970 manufactured home, you replace the windows, or you take out a 15 kW furnace and you put in a 1100, dollar heat pump, you want to change those people's lives.
Absolutely.
You're gonna go from $400 power bill a month to a $100 power. So I'm
Yeah,
wondering if,
absolutely.
and this is not for you, what you're doing is fantastic. I'm wondering if we're broadcasting this too much money. I mean, should we, like with pre-K, for example, we went to some areas where we know the need is there, right? And so if we went to a community, or even if there was a manufactured home park where 80% of the people owned their homes, and they were lower income folks, and it was older homes. And we decided that, $1.5 million, you can do 1,000, $1,500 heat pumps. And you can change out on 1,000 homes, you can change out the HVAC on that.
And windows.
You could just do the HVAC. I mean, most of the older homes, let's say an old home now would be 1980. In the early 80s, most of those homes would have storm windows. A lot of those homes, though, would be still equipped with not a heat pump.
Right.
In the early 80s, the power would, and they probably still do now, they would give you a rebate on any of that you install. So I'm wondering if we want to attack a neighborhood, or you want to fix an old manufactured home community that people own, and you want to return energy back, you want to save, you want to long-term save a lot of energy, then should we just be doing with this network? Should we be going after a community instead of them taking phone calls? Of 100 phone calls. Should we be going over here and saying, in Emma,
Right.
or wherever?
Yeah, and part of this will be targeted community outreach, because we've done the research up to this point to know specifically which neighborhoods are those that have the highest energy intensity, and of course they tend to be where we expect them to be. And so we've already sort of overlaid our community outreach strategy in terms of, we know these pockets that we have, or these really high energy intensity. We also know who's coming to get that assistance. So we can sort of overlay these things to say, okay, we need to get this particular community involved in this project, so we're going to go after that. I will say that, part of writing that grant, that was, and I mentioned it here, there was a very big focus on equity and inclusiveness in the way that this program has to be designed. So they're very concerned about that. The funding agency is very concerned about that. So part of what we're going to be going through as a group, for every agency that's involved in this, and that's Duke and everybody else, we're actually going to be having an equity consultant help us with the design of this program to ensure that we're not missing anything, you know? And that we're-
You just turn up Louisiana Avenue?
Yeah.
That's all you gotta do. Seriously, I'm serious, I'm being serious.
And
You wanna find the thousand
Yeah, and when I
folks that
say-
you can impact,
Right.
turn up Louisiana Avenue, and you got the almost home park, you got, I really don't know how many people in there own their homes, because there's a difference between
Sure.
somebody that is renting. and
Absolutely. It's a whole different set of barriers that you have
I
to
mean,
meet.
it's hard, I don't know what all we can do, but if they're
Yeah.
trying to own their home,
Yeah.
you know, they certainly good folks to be able to go help.
But to me, so we know 1 in 4 children in our community don't have enough to eat. And I bet I bet those children live in pockets somewhere, and I can't think of anything more desperate. To me, as a commission, we can't, all this is really good, but we can't wait. So there's just gotta be a better way, because we hear this year after year after year, and we're spending $1.5 million on heating. So couldn't there be a better way when people get heating assistance to link them automatically to, couldn't that work?
I would say one, that those are federal programs have federal
Right.
money for the most part. But I think that's what Jeremiah's saying. Evelyn is the hub for those applications. We contract that work to Evelyn. So those connections are being made at Evelyn. That is one of the referral sources. We were having a conversation, Jennifer, about promoting it in the tax office for those people who come in asking to go on a payment plan and who are struggling with taxes because we know there's home ownership. I mean, so there are other pockets and places. I don't know about the Emma Co-op. I mean, you know, is another example. So I think Commissioner Belcher makes a really good point. How do we target it more to community?
I think that, I mean, you don't have to do that, you don't have to go that way, but, you know, we know who, if you wanted to target older, you know, structures, whatever they might be. Sure. Okay? And you, you researched it as a dollar amount on a tax basis, okay? Houses that are on the tax roll are under $50,000, for example. No matter what type of home that is, I mean, no matter whether it's manufactured, whether it's an old frame house or whatever, chances are it's old. Chances are it has older insulation in it, which you might not be able to fix. But you can fix doors, windows, weather stripping, you know, maybe even in some extreme cases, if you exchange out an old, you know, 15 AW4 air furnace for a heat pump. Maybe there's a way to do that and dramatically impact the community. And whether it be finding the money through grants, whether it be the federal program, you know, if a lot of these weather, one, I like this, I'm stuck on this energy saving network because I know if you go in and you change somebody's home and you give them an opportunity to keep their home, you've changed their life.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've impacted generations. I'm just telling you, if you figure out a way for them to stay in their home, you impact generations. You don't impact just a little, just a few years. But you know, if there's a way to, if you want to save energy, that's a way to save energy.
Absolutely. So I guess what I meant by proof of concept, I don't disagree with you. We all know it works. What we're trying to do is use verifiable data. In other words, we use it's actually a software tool called ResiSpeed to actually do a data analysis of their bills pre-retrofit and post-retrofit so that we can go to Duke with a number. So we saved you, 200 kilowatt hours by doing this, and they can pay us for that 200 kilowatt hours to help continue funding these types of initiatives. The problem is that Duke is very limited in the way that they can roll out programs based on the structure that they're given by the Utility Commission. And rather than ask Buncombe County's Board of Commissioners every year, I need more money, I need more money, I need more money. We're looking for creative ways to get other entities involved in helping to fund these initiatives. But I agree with you, I mean, we know it works, but that's what I mean when I say proof of concept, is that we have to get a broader support from, like, an investor-owned utility to come in and help pay for these retrofits as well. It can't just be the county constantly just, going back every year and allocating $1 million for retrofits. I mean, that's
But
the way you
Truman
want to do
asked
it. You
the
guys have that
question a
control.
year ago, and we still could do it for next cycle, but we can amend our LEAP, our low energy heating assistance or energy assistance federal plan to include some of these energy savings.
Yeah.
Which the feds allow that, saying we're helping with heating assistance, you can include some
Well,
of these in your plan.
we did have a meeting with the folks in that community who, kind of work on that, providing low-income heating assistance to families in the county. And all those organizations are 100% for doing all of this and more. But at the same time, it was very clear, like, those dollars are needed to
And a
help
lot of them
people,
don't
just pay their bill
understand.
now, because these are folks who are, when it gets cold and you can't pay your bills, that just needs to be done. So I don't think we can look at that pool of money as the funding source for because that money's just, it's needed, it's already been cut, a lot. So we did kind of have that conversation, and
We ran the numbers by zip code and other, to your point, the chair has run them by zip code and other things. So we know, as Jim says, we know where the households are.
Yeah.
But that is the point, if you alter that plan, it is taking money that goes out directly for people.
And I'm not for altering anything, I'm all for adding to it, and, every home that's fixed, we're not gonna have to do that.
Absolutely.
For a while. And I have another question. My daughter works with people that are on Hvac. So what's the process? And so those folks have their power cut off. She deals with this all the time in the winter. People that need electricity for their heart pumps. So what happens if they get the notice their power's being cut off?
They can come to us, or they can go to Evelyn or ABCCN. If they have a condition like that, the power company cannot disconnect their power during the winter. And we will also work with them and contact the power company as well and help them up to the limit that the program allows us to, which is $600.
And I don't think they're aware of that, and the folks that she deals with are not aware that their power can be cut.
I was
Yeah.
actually just in a meeting this morning
Right.
with Evelyn and ABCC, and we
Right.
were talking about this very same thing about what message we need to get out to the community about that. So I'll make sure to follow up with you about this.
I can just make one comment on this. The Energy Innovation Task Force group has really these questions about how do you address this huge need. There's 18,000 mobile homes in Buncombe County before you ever get into any of the stick-built houses. And some of those are newer and they're in pretty good shape, but a lot of them, thousands and thousands of them are older too. But there's been a ton of discussion about this, and I think that I think the staff have done a great job kind of zeroing in on how to kind of use the county's, the additional resources we're putting into this arena to kind of leverage as much as we can get from all the Duke incentives and the other things that are out there. One really cool thing that I think is going to happen this year that would be an opportunity for us to work with Duke is Duke has this program called Neighborhood Energy Savers, where they do go into a whole neighborhood and basically try to retrofit homes across an entire neighborhood. And so they've agreed to bring that program back to Buncombe County this year. And so the county and all these different partners we work with, and Duke have kind of agreed to kind of take that program and just try to really blow it up and make it bigger and more successful and get more folks participating than we've ever had before. We don't know exactly where it's going to go yet, but it'll be, a neighborhood like the kind of neighborhoods that Commissioner Belcher's been mentioning. So there's going to be some opportunities to do some additional things like that with partners.
The idea behind that specific initiative is to tag team it and get as many providers come into the table.
And Duke will be paying for, like everybody we get to participate, Duke will be writing those checks, so again, we're kind of leveraging, you know, our folks.
Thank you for mentioning
Yeah.
that. That was one. Got that. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on because I know I'm unlimited. But if you have additional questions, if I can talk more about this with you, please do. Let's talk about it. So I mentioned Duke Energy programs and their lack of market participation. So one of the things that we're trying to do there too is engage the business community and get them on board with these program initiatives. So we had just a terrific meeting on September 7th with all of the Duke program managers from all over the Southeast. I mean, they flew in from 6 different states to be at this meeting to talk to us about why is it so difficult to get people signed up for your program? Why is your market participation so low? How do we cut through the red tape? You know, because when people go to Duke's website or people call a large utility, you don't get anywhere half the time. So what we're doing is we're doing these community forums, and we've got one scheduled for December 5th. It'll be our first one. December 5th, we're going to have. We've invited all of the businesses that have signed up for the Workplace Challenge, and they're going to be coming to the chamber to do a lunch and learn where the program managers from Duke are going to be present to sign people up at that meeting, to schedule appointments, to talk to them about technical assistance, to do energy audits for their buildings, to look at Energy Wise for Business, Small Business Energy Saver program. The whole point is to sort of cut through the red tape, have the program managers on site to schedule them, and get them signed up for these programs right then and there. Because it just will cut through a lot of the sort of bureaucracy that people have to deal with when trying to get a hold of a company the size of Duke. Frankly, I know people at Duke pretty well, and I still get confused about who I'm supposed to talk to about what, So it can be a real issue. So this is going to be our pilot. So we're going to try and use this first go-round as a way to get feedback on how we can target specific industries. When we do these forums, we're going to try and do one at least every quarter and target hotels, restaurants, breweries, various sort of targeted sectors in the community. So that's something that we're pretty excited about actually, and it's the city, it's the chamber, it's lots of different groups coming together to put this on, provide everybody lunch, and get them signed up for these new programs to start saving energy in their facilities. Didn't want to forget about county. That was something I was very strongly interested in doing when they first asked me to take this position. We're one of the largest employers in town. We have almost 1,500 employees. There was no reason not to include our own people. So one of the things I really wanted to do was to provide a home energy efficiency workshop for our employees. So we had that a couple of months ago. It went really well. I had to turn people away. I'm going to have another one because we had so many people sign up I didn't have room for them. And it was really good. We had great feedback. It was just basically an hour and a half long workshop at lunch to provide people with tips and just basic information on how to make their home more energy efficient. And we talked to them a little bit about signing up for Duke programs and how to just make the best with what you have at home without sort of low cost, no cost things you can do in your own home. So the feedback was tremendous. All the employees seemed to really enjoy it. So I'm going to have to just keep doing those until nobody comes anymore. I was really, really happy with the success we had. We've also talked about incentivizing, again, trying to get market penetration for these programs, incentivizing employees for signing up for things like Energy Wise Home program. So, for example, it's very similar to our Healthy Hours program where you go get your numbers checked once every 6 months and you can earn 4 hours of comp time just for getting your numbers done at the health clinic. Same kind of thing. If you can sign up for Duke programs, we can provide you with 2 hours of comp time. That way it's sort of a no-cost way to incentivize our employees to continue to work with energy efficiency in their own home. Money. It's going to be a question. What are we spending? So just to date, the investment was $350,000 for the community fund. We've got contracts for about $53,000 in energy audits for all of our fire departments and community facilities. $60,000 towards low-income energy retrofits. plus some additional money we've got that we're gonna put in for grant match. The employee workshop was about $1,500. There is potential, I didn't put this up here at the time that I did the slideshow, but there's potential we're also going to invest some additional funding with the EITF to help with marketing and communication for the broader EITF initiative. That's not up here yet.
What's ESN?
Energy Savers Network, I apologize, yes.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, Energy Savers Network, that's the low-income weatherization program.
So, the 60,000, what? So, how many homes have been weatherized so far?
Just a couple dozen, but by the time it's actually ramped up and going, again, we just signed that contract last month. So it's approximately 80 to 85 homes for the $25,000 initial investment. And then with this Candida grant that we've got, it's gonna be another 100 homes on top of that.
They won't do mobile homes,
Yes,
or they will do mobile?
yeah, the Energy Savers Network
No,
absolutely.
no, the grant, the 300.
The grant does not, but Energy Savers on their own does.
Right.
And I think that it is important to remember that when you say manufactured homes, that there are, and yeah,
Yes,
Sorry.
yes.
that if you looked at the mix, it would probably surprise you what the mix is, because there are a lot of older frame homes, older rentals, that people probably also,
Yeah.
so.
One of the things that we really like about Energy Savers in general too is that there's not eligibility requirements that are going to prevent people from getting help. There's not the sort of red tape that you might have to deal with a community action opportunity. There's a long application process, and you get on a waiting list, and Energy Savers Network, they're never going to turn anybody down.
Right.
They're also not going to say, well, you make too much money. You still get paycheck to paycheck, but you don't fall within this specific threshold, so we're not going to do your house. There's a lot of flexibility there, and that's one of the reasons we really appreciate that program.
Do we do anything with the owners of the manufactured home parks that rent them out? Is there any criteria for how?
We haven't, I don't think there's, but I think it's a great opportunity to work with some of these larger, real estate portfolio managers to do, again, kind of take the idea of like, because part of the idea is like, how do we scale it up? And how do we touch more? So if we can work with some of these bigger, property management groups who own hundreds or thousands, or work with whole neighborhoods, then once we get a good concept, and I think that's kind of the direction we'd love to go.
And then I know
Absolutely.
we were working on changing the landlord thing with fiscal legal. Is any of that, what I'm talking about?
The safety,
Yeah.
the minimum housing standards. So I think they reached out just in the last week or two, and I think it's one of the things Bruce has on his list to talk about all the different models and their recommendations.
But this could be helpful with that.
And it is a piece of what we contract with PISCO for, is that landlord
Right.
advocacy legal issue.
Has there been any conversation with the housing authority?
Not specifically. Not specifically.
To me, that would be like at the top of the.
It'd be interesting to hear. Is it, or,
They have been doing a lot of this in the last 3 or 4 years.
Is that right?
They have. They've actually made a lot of it.
I think there's, I just saw it recently, there's a, you might be able to Google it, it's in California, where they have actually went into, I don't know if the people own the manufacturing communities or not, they're going in and offering, along with several programs, local programs, they've come up with some ways to address, some of this work that we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah, we're 4.5 months into this office being in existence. So, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like that's a lot of work that's gone on just in the last 4.5 months. So there's a lot more to be done, and we're still learning lessons and trying to figure out what is going to be the most effective way to utilize the resources that we do have. We may pivot on some of the things that we've talked about and end up going in a different direction. We don't know that yet, but we're still learning those lessons and trying to just make the most of what we have and do the most effective things that we can do with the resources we can give. So, Anyway, like I said, 4.5 months in, I think there's a lot going on, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions you have, yes.
I'd just like to say it's so exciting to get this update, and thank you to you and everyone else who's been working to go from, got this idea.
Oh, no, just me, it's just me.
This is really exciting.
And Clint helps you just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little.
I'd love for us to keep getting updates, especially as we head into the winter season.
Absolutely.
And-
Well, we're at that point now where the
Yeah.
rubber's really meeting the road. You know, getting the audits done is a really critical step for us. I mean, if you notice, there's really not a whole lot of money being spent, right? There's still a significant portion of that community fund left. The reason it's still there is we're trying to be really diligent with our resources to get the information we need to figure out what projects we're going to invest in so that the rest of that money can get put to the best use possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart approach.
And I think that's great too, but I also don't want people to be told.
Absolutely, absolutely, which is why we went ahead and wrote Energy Savers Network a check
Yeah.
and just said, get to work.
Yeah.
There was a statistic that came out of a conference recently that just blew my mind that said that the #1 indicator of infant mortality is eviction.
Right.
And so I think that as the heater on the brink, it's really important that we be as mindful about the need out there. In keeping stable housing is really, really critical.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
and to your point, when people are in that circumstance, their wits are not about seeking out, they don't think they have any opportunities, they don't think anything's coming to help, so.
Yeah, community engagement's gonna be a real big part of
Yeah.
this. We're gonna have to do the community engagement component right. We won't be able to mess that up. You don't get a second chance.
Since you said about community engagement, can we incorporate community engagement, some TIPIC grants? We had all these passionate young people that seem to be involved. Could we somehow incorporate that with our community engagement team?
I thought that was a great idea. Yeah, that's who spoke out, we're so interested in the issue.
Yes.
Some structure.
Right.
Thanks, it's right.
Yeah, they could go to work for you.
Yeah,
Do
they're
you-
they're
do you-
looking for volunteers.
That's not clear, I mean, what's the, I'm not clear on the idea.
So, we have a lot of tipping grant opportunities, and the community engagement team, they're out there, so if we can engage more young people who are interested in this to, get involved.
In energy efficiency
Yeah,
projects?
maybe whether I, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if some people knew that there was actually a startup group that was actually going to the homes and helping winterize their homes, and they should be a part of that and help that those people, but also save energy, help the environment, that
Have
would be
any-
worthwhile for them to know about things.
And at UMCA, they always do projects out there.
I'd like to get county employees involved too.
Yeah.
There's no reason that we have large pool of people, we can't pull a few volunteers, offer them opportunities for weekend work, with Energy Savers and, help your neighbor,
I mean, what if, like Joe said, you're changing that person's
Yeah,
life?
absolutely.
Yes. So I know that this is a big discussion, we're not gonna be able to handle it here, but if we really wanted to tackle it, we could do it, we could tackle it, and we should. We should look at communities, we should look at the older frame houses, we should look at rental parks, we should look at some of those very costs. The most heartbreaking thing I've heard so far is the thought of a child being told to be faced with eviction. And that, if you can affect some homeless, it's a win.
Absolutely.
And we may not, there's a lot of lower price housing in the county, because that's all those folks can afford, but some of those folks are paying $400 power bill.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't take much to go from a $400 power bill to a $300 power bill. And $100 a month is life-changing for some of these folks. I mean, so,
And that's unfortunately how these things work, is that the people that can afford it the least are the ones that are most impacted.
this is a great way to invest to get
I'm glad you feel that.
I'm just talking, I'm talking about older homes, people that are struggling, figuring out a way to help them stay in their home, build everything. I just to try to calm that down. There's, if we can do a little bit, that's not a bad thing.
And we will continue to update you guys as we need it, you know, so. And I'm on the fourth floor. You guys are always welcome to come by and ask questions anytime.
Well, to all you guys, thank you. That's a great update of what you're doing, you know, for our own public facilities. And I feel like, you know, first and foremost, we got to take care of the stuff that we directly own. You know, lead by example, save money directly on our stuff. The things that are being looked at in the community are really exciting too, and a lot of, you know, a lot of great thought has gone into this. You know, it is a you know, every family that you help, it makes a real difference. This is a huge scale challenge. You know, part of it is kind of trying to think about how to start approaching it in a way that really moves the needle. Because, you know, even if you know, and I really appreciate the commission's support for that initial funding in this year's budget to do that, because those decisions are always hard. You know, I really appreciate that. So, but even if we had another zero on that amount of money we were investing, you know, this is such a large scale problem.
Yeah.
You know, we would not solve this quickly. You know, we're talking about the housing stock of, you know, Buncombe County, a county with 250,000 people in it. So I think we need to think about this as a really long-term effort, try to invest these dollars, you know, as cost effectively as we can, and continue to use all these partnership opportunities that we have to kind of stretch the resources. But you guys have gotten us off to a great start on these new parts of what we're doing. So thanks for the updates.
Absolutely.
Any other questions before we're going to take a break?
Yeah, I just want to, more so sort of for us talking, we haven't had a chance to talk as a commission since we voted on the clean energy resolution. And I think from just informal conversations, my sense is that, and I certainly see it this way, that everything we've just talked about the last hour or so is absolutely tied to the discussion about and the commitment around pointing towards the longer term and more ambitious goal of that. And I think maybe as we move forward in that conversation, we can just, on our side, be more intentional about connecting those dots to say, you know, this is, Commission's made clear commitment on this, is investing funding in it, anticipates that continuing to grow, and that's tethered to this longer range, and in my opinion, really critical policy goal that we need to be oriented towards as well. So I just kind of wanted to put a pin in that of us on this, and some other issues where we have discussions about sort of longer term visions, and then we're also sort of in the short term engaged in immediate strategies that have at least a thematic connection. For us to just be more deliberate, especially as we're talking with community members about connecting the dots there. Because this is a commission, I think, that's working hard on sustainability issues, putting a lot of energy into that. I'm eager for us to have time to talk about when and how we can bring the resolution back, and keep that process moving forward so that we're not just looking at those shorter term strategies, but we're looking at the long view as well.
I look at it as what we're trying to do is probably okay, but we're following all the groups that you're talking about, all the way down the line. So we're not starting at the top, we're starting at the bottom. Duke's always had money out there, they put it in a little metal deal that they'll do what they can to help you bring your home up to, you know, save money. That's, you get it about every month, especially in the wintertime. All these places you're talking about, YMI, YWCA, all the places, ABCC, these have been around for quite a while. That's why I said we're getting in at the bottom. We're not getting in at the top. These people have been working on this kind of stuff for quite a while. Evelyn's been around forever. It's like Mandy said, they're the ones that carry the ball. And all we're doing is just add to the ball. It's like, yeah, we want to be sustainable, but then we want some change too. Well, some of the change that I see is not really changing because you have people go out all the time and try to help people with their homes. You have kids coming in from different states that help people actually rebuild homes. So adding money into that, that's fine. as long as those people can help make sure they insulate. As Joe said, we've got to look at the mobile homes as well as we look at, he's just talking one side of Lexington, I know those are Louisiana, I know the other side of Louisiana. And the homes up there are built in the 1920s. So, everybody needs help, but we have to watch it in a way, and I appreciate you getting the grants and stuff, but this is not the first rodeo we're trying to help people. And so, I think we can do so much, but let's just don't take it to just our initiative, because the initiative's been out there.
Well, I think we're all on the same page, and, I think, this board is about action, and, maybe not so much about words. To me, I'm fine with saying by 2030, 100% renewable. To me, that's as much pie in the sky as saying by 2030, nobody in our community will be addicted to opiates. All these things I want to happen, but, I think it's important to back everything that we're doing up with action. And we are doing that with action. I'd like to put a lot more money into keeping people warm and also making them sustainable. So I think it's important for us not to get crossways over resolutions and words, but I think it's important to put actions, meaning dollars, into our work, and your work is extraordinary, and I thank you. It's great to hear all this. But then, I don't think we need to get stuck on a word when we're providing action and moving forward. And Mike's right, there are certain things that are the same, but by continuing that continuity, we're moving forward, because if one child's life is changed because they're not cold anymore, we're moving forward. So to me, involving Jeremiah in the sustainability office in words defeats where we're going. Does that make sense?
I think this has been a great update. I mean, I sit in so many meetings about this. I cannot believe. So I really appreciate the commission wanting to kind of get an update on this. I think it obviously sparks a lot of, it's something people are really interested in. So I appreciate the commission's interested in it too. I mean, one thing I would say though, in terms of kind of thinking about future policy work of the county commission, is that this is undeniably kind of focused on like the energy efficiency opportunities we have in our public buildings and in low-income households, and then supporting those things in the small business community. It is very energy efficiency oriented, and there's great stuff happening. Commissioner Fryer's right. There's been a lot of great groups working on these kind of efforts for a long time, and I think it's great that the commission is sort of joining them. But we didn't start this. That's a great point. I think on the renewable policy, it is, we're still talking about energy, but it is a different thing. The kinds of things I think we would need to do as a commission to achieve, the idea of procuring a lot of our power from renewable sources, even though it's still energy, the kinds of things we would need to do that are different than the kind of things that we got updates on today. I mean, certainly we want to drive down the amount of electricity we need as much as we can through efficiency, sure. But you're never going to get that to, zero. Or even probably that close to it. You're going to have to generate some renewable power. So I just kind of want to make that distinction, because I do think there's some different kinds of efforts we would need to undertake if we decide that we want to try to do that.
Definitively. I see it sort of like saying, we want the first 2,000 days of every kid's life in Buncombe County to be as healthy as possible. One set of strategies is expanding access to early childhood education, which you do through a whole set of tactics in one sector. Another set of strategies is around making sure people have access to good prenatal care and pediatric care and access to food. But it's all the same concept, driven by the same value and vision. We want every kid to thrive in Buncombe County. So that, at least in my orientation towards sort of the policy level discussion and where that meets the sort of short-term programming and strategies we're engaged with, if it's about a community, or at least for me, it's coming from this commitment around us really tackling these questions around energy efficiency, renewable energy, how we, and the correlation to everything from affordable housing to how we're stewards to the incredible landscape we're in. So at least for me, I connect those dots. I'm not saying the sustainability office is tasked with, if we were to pass that resolution tasked with that, or they would require a whole other set of robust strategies, but that on the level of what's the value driving this work. And for me at least, it's part of making an argument and case for the sustainability office being a really critical piece of the county's work moving forward, is saying, is that it's not a one-off sort of siloed department that sits over here and isn't connected or tethered to these other policy initiatives. So at least, just to be as sort of transparent as I can in a work session about how I'm connecting the dots, that's where they come together for me. And it feels like, we can't operate in a 2029 landscape right now. We don't know what that's gonna look like. But when we can invest, I think when we invest in these short-term strategies and commit the funding required to execute them, it's an immediate way to say we're taking action on one front of the energy and related climate issues today. So that's how I would.
And I think that's a short and a long term. I think it's an immediate fix, but it represents a long-term solution.
Well, I think what we gotta remember here is we're talking about goals and what we need to accomplish. And all of it, I think, will get to the sustainability when we look for 30, what we're talking about. But we gotta realize that we're talking about long-term and short-term goals. And let's not get them confused. But at the end, we all want to be at the same place. When we think about the sustainable, the big, heavy lifting that we're gonna have to do, it's gonna take a long time to do it, we know. But we've got to start today if we're gonna get there. On the other hand, some of these short-term things, helping the kids or saving the babies, we're gonna have to do now. And I think it's all,
And we do need to take a break.
Right.
So let's, final word.
Let me say one thing, and I'll hush. And I think one of the things that's come out of the discussion today, when we start talking about these individual families and the impacts of it, is from the presentation I've heard today, I have full confidence that you guys are going to make the changes that are necessary to keep our buildings and all that efficient moving forward. I don't have to say, and see, to me, if saving energy in those buildings is a really big deal. It is. But when you go out to these communities, you help those communities, you help one family, they got to run side by side, but in my mind, it's a bigger deal. And I couldn't say that if I didn't have confidence in the way these guys have delivered year after year and keeping some of these costs down and implementing some of the things we talked about the last couple of years.
All right, we got a break. Let's start again. We're gonna have to keep this shorter. Can we start again in like 7 minutes? Yeah. And if you need efficiently.
All right.
Line part is.
Most of it is.
You'll get better.
what you say.
You want to eat it? All right. You may have?
I got one.
All right, y'all, let's move on. We made up time, and then we were also interested in the last topic. We lost about a few more minutes. We're gonna get right back on track. We're a little ahead of schedule, but not as much as we would like to be. So let's move on to 19 budget planning. Go for it.
So I think most of you should know us by now, but if not, I'm Autumn Livers, and this is Matt Evans. So we're representing budget today. For the past couple of weeks, we've been going out to each county department and sitting down with department directors and our budget contacts and officially kicking off the fiscal year 2019 budget process. And we're very excited to give you our overview today. So as we've been sitting down in these sessions, we've been developing and demonstrating new tools, and we've also been communicating with departments about new expectations. So we've really geared this process to be around transparency and openness in the budget process. So we've really tried to convey, we want you all, we want departments to have new expectations of the budget office. So we just really want you to know we're open, we want to share any information we have with you every step of the way.
Especially when it's their departmental budgets, you know.
We don't want anyone to feel like we're harboring budget information. So, really striving for an open and collaborative process this year. So the first resource we want to share with you is our internal budget site. So this is an internal county website, so you have to be on the county network to access this. We do have a lot of this information available for the public as well, so we'll show you that website in just a second. But you can get to this through County Central, so I hope the screen looks familiar for you. If you go to the department intranet dropdown, we are at the top. So just click on budget and you'll be redirected here.
Can you go back to that drop down box? Does it make sense? So that's just for us, right? You said that's just for us.
This is internal.
You can
Okay.
get here and our site is open to all county employees.
Okay.
So we've had a SharePoint site, which is the county intranet's, I don't want to try to explain it from a bunch of IT folks, but we basically had this resource, but we haven't utilized it fully until now. So what we've done is, we've taken all these requests that we typically get, amendment request form, LIT request form. We've kind of put them all in one place here, and this is an ever-changing monster, so anything you guys think that you would like to see there, we can put that there. We've asked all departments to come in and say anything they would like to see, we can throw in there. But to highlight, we have a budget amendment request form, which has changed since before. So if you look on the left, that's what it used to look like. And if you look on the right, you can see that we're trying to give more information, trying to make it a little bit more friendly. You can see on the left that if you were to zoom in here, it would just be multiple projects going down the sheet. Where's the money going? You know, what are we doing with it? Versus trying to have one form per one project. And basically what we've done is we've taken this form here, and you may be familiar with an agenda cover sheet. Back when Kathy used to post the budget amendments, and there would be an accompanying document called the agenda cover sheet. We've just married the two forms together for ease, for the public's ease, for your ease, for our ease. So. Also on our SharePoint side, we do have some departmental tools such as a salary benefits calculator. So in our department, we get asked a lot, hey, we have a grant, we have X amount of dollars, say we have $50,000, we want to staff an employee, we think it's going to cost $40,000. So then it's our job to go, hey, I don't know if $50,000 is going to cover that, and this is why. So with this calculator here, we've been able to just give departments that can come here, they'll download your machine. You guys are welcome to use this tool as well, obviously. You come here, it would download, and basically what it does is it highlights every single benefit that the county offers, so you can throw in a $40,000 position, and you can see how it really adds up to $60,000 or $70,000. We also have current budget year, such as FY18, as well as upcoming budget year resources. So if you were to click around, you would see we have the budget in brief. This is a document that you guys should be familiar with. If you ever need it on the fly, it's on the budget SharePoint side. We have the current budget, or the budget count for FY18 there. We also have a line item general fund budget. So if you're ever curious about that, we are adding the other funds on there as well. We also have the capital plan as it stands today. As well as community funding, as the process was before we changed it. So this would be FY18 community funding. This should be all encompassing as well, contracts, grants.
Are nonprofits?
These are the nonprofits, yes. And then FY19 will grow as the year progresses and as we put more stuff on there, so.
So as we developed the FY19 budget calendar, we really took into account a lot of the feedback you gave us at our July budget work session with you. So we're really excited about this new format. You can access it through the intranet site. It's right under FY19 budget docs and information. So we've really tried to build on it. Of course, the due dates are there, but we've added additional information as well as links to other documents and resources that are relevant for that specific item. So this is the internal view of the calendar. The public also has access to the budget calendar on the buncombecounty.org website. So they're same calendar. There might be some differences with the links. We've given departments link to request forms on the internal budget calendar, so the public might just not see those links because they wouldn't have access to those. But one nice feature about this calendar is you can subscribe to it, you can share it, and you can even filter by budget category.
So in the past, last year's calendar looked like this. And this is great. I mean, you can put it on your court cord, but it doesn't breathe, you know. So any changes that would have to be made would have to be, our office would have to send out an email that says, hey, we changed this, if you're interested. However, with this new format, you guys can hit subscribe, it'll kick out to your work Outlook email, and anything that we change, you will be notified so you can stay current with us the whole time through the budget process. So anything you guys want to change, we'll update it on our calendar, departments will see it.
Yeah, and as the process continues, we'll keep building and adding new links, new documents as those are developed. So we are in the midst of the capital budget process. So departments will be submitting capital and IT project requests through the end of November. We've made a lot of changes to this part of the process. Specifically, the capital improvement policy has been revised. So you have a copy of the proposed policy in your packet. So please review that. That policy will come back before you at your December 5th board meeting for formal adoption. But I did want to highlight some of the biggest changes in the policy. So the old policy is also included in your packet for reference. It was very short, 3 paragraphs, so we really tried to build on it. The new policy establishes the purpose for having such a policy and defines what a capital project is. It does lower what is considered a capital project from $250,000 to $25,000. And the big driver behind that change is to be consistent with our asset capitalization policy, which recognizes that any asset over $25,000 is booked as an asset and depreciated over its useful life. So it really just brings the two policies in connection and have consistency there. The policy also establishes a formal review process, saying the senior leadership team will be reviewing all capital project requests, and then they will then come to you as a board to consider. It clarifies the adoption of the 5-year capital improvement plan by you, so it specifies that when you adopt the 5-year plan, you're really approving the first year of that plan and giving conditional approval on the remaining 4 years. It gives you increased oversight of project savings. So when a capital project is complete, we will bring that back before you with options of like how you want to treat the savings, you want to move some things around. You will have oversight into all of that. And it also identifies roles and responsibilities for administration and implementation. So review that at your leisure. Again, it'll come back before you December 5th for formal adoption.
Let's say we're leaving this meeting, you have your papers, the big gust of wind comes and takes them all away. Luckily for you, we have the SharePoint site. And you can review that document here at this point, so.
So does it make more sense, you know, when I went to the intranet tab, to me, my eyes went real glossy when I saw it. Is that just not?
There's a lot going on. So
There's a lot going on. Now, if that was a budget tab, I mean, and maybe everything that's under internet doesn't need to be a budget tab. But to me, it's the top of there, at the top of the page. But it's at the top of the page needs to be a budget tab. We can have a talk with all of them. But to me, I mean, if I'm an employee, team member, whatever, you know, and I'm actually wanting to see the budget or budget discussions or whatever associated with it, then somewhere up there should just simply be a budget tab. I mean, I don't have to hunt through everything, I don't have to, and I'm a commissioner saying that.
Yeah, that's great feedback.
You know what I'm
saying? I mean, so
Definitely
the average-
want to have this team.
We'll make sure someone from IT hears that.
Yeah.
I agree that there is a lot going on that page.
Well, I didn't know either, but I mean, I was thinking of, you know, all the different things at my house and stuff, I didn't know.
I may be wrong, but I think that this is the homepage for employees, yeah.
So it's easy to add a link.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, it's easy to add a tab, but go ahead. Well, that's an annual, as you said, that's a living document. It's going on
Oh,
all
it
the
is,
time,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So it's going to be relevant all the time.
Not to mention our office, you know, we house a lot of questions, and we house a lot of, you know, like ideas flow through us, so we're really trying to push this site for folks to come to. So if we find it, you know, it's definitely.
So in that site, if you have a budget site and all this comes up, is there or should there be a place for them to provide their comments, their input, their lean ideas, their cost saving measures, their thoughts?
Yeah, we've talked about that, and right now the only tool we have is providing everyone with our budget email address, so we just say, for now, email us budget@buncombecounty.org, any ideas, any questions, any concerns, but I think it would be great to have something right here front and center.
Because it's more anonymous if you do that. If they can just type in their comments and you're just pulling a bunch of comments, rather than, oh, I got email, y'all got my email, no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
That's not what happens. You know, so you can just,
Okay. I think
just think about it.
buncombecounty.org, does it have a feature like that? Maybe we could copy that.
So you've already gone out and talked to the department?
We have.
And I think, and last year probably wasn't the first year, but I think it was a combination of negativity, but the sense was that I got through department heads, there was an element of fear and arbitrary dictates from the budget office, and it was hard to decipher. And I know that that was not you all, but I think there's a lot of ground to be made up as far as trust goes. And people are much more creative when they're not frightened. So I hope there can be more collaborative.
Yes, we agreed. That's one reason we wanted to get out and have these like in-person meetings with every director and their staff. And we found it was really helpful. We talked through a lot of issues, and we think we're on the right track.
It was definitely beneficial to put our faces with the names.
Yeah.
Get out there and talk to folks, you know, like, we look at numbers all the time. And you have to have context in those numbers, and people have to trust you to send you what you need, so. And it's definitely, we lived last year, and you all lived last year with us, so.
And I think the manager drives the process, and Randy has totally,
Yeah.
you know, opened up and
communication and just has a totally different philosophy, and that's coming down into our process.
You know, and I think everybody was in a bad position. Commissioners didn't know that you were being asked to tell department heads to cut their budgets by 3%. You know, that was in a vacuum, and you were the messenger. And we didn't know, so that when we heard about it sideways, it created a feeling.
So to speak to the capital request, or the capital process, we've actually included capital request forms as well as IT request forms into this side as well. So while we have the capital process open, departments can go in and click here. You guys can as well. And you'll see that it's taken us to this landing page. This is basically every request that comes through from every department. And it's sorted by department as well as sorted by type of request. And we can see different statuses of requests. We can see the amounts as well as my budget request. So if I was in planning and I submitted a planning request, I could come in here and hit this button. But we have a make new capital request button here, which is the same as going here. A pre-populated form, but just to give you guys some insight, our goal is to keep everyone informed through the whole process this year. So if someone submits a budget request, they're going to know at any point in time where that request is. So what we've done is we've worked with some folks to build a form out where we can collect some really good data, and it's going to drive email chains. So you can see here, we had 5 forms before. We've shrunk it down to 1 form. If we come in here, we have expenditures. Something new this year we've tried to do is we've put a 5-year projection on there. So we can say, you know, we have a huge, we're building a building or something. So folks can come in here and use their estimates to the best of their ability. They can throw it in there. Our office is in the know. That means finance is in the know if we need to work on, you know, if it gets approved, we can work on pay-go or debt. We have a funding section. People can say, oh, I've got grant, you know, Josh, you come in and say, I've got grant match for this Greenway project or something. You can throw that in there. Because before this process, we had spreadsheets and we were sending them out and folks were confused. They didn't know where to put things. So this is really driving a lot of things. But if anything, this is also a testament as to what could come with the county, you know, with our office and gathering data and using tools that are friendly for departments, as well as beneficial to you all. And this form also has a phase schedule. And then we also have an IT request form as well.
So that one you haven't totally completed. So I'm assuming if you're requesting $30,000 for equipment, which that was, that there would be detail in there.
There would be detail. Yeah. Theoretically, there would be detail. And what it does is I would hit save and close, where I would submit it. And what it will do is you'll see this received by budget. And the beauty of this form is, let me zoom in there so you can see it. You see that status of request is received by budget. And what it does is someone will go in, they will put a project manager in. SharePoint's great, it's Microsoft, it automatically knows who the requester is. It's going to keep everyone emailed throughout this whole process. So our team can go in, we can review the forms, we can change the status to more information requested, we can go in, we can type, hey, this sounds awesome, we need more information on how this might impact this or how it might impact that. We hit send, it automatically kicks a chain of emails out, keeps everybody in the know. The senior leadership team that Autumn spoke to, we can say, hey, it's sent to senior leadership team for review, or we can change the status to approved, and you're getting email and you're getting pinged every time. So
That's really good.
Constant feedback.
Yeah.
loop.
Yeah.
And I will say that we have an IT request form as well. And what this is going to do, there are folks who are going to come in here, they say, hey, we have an IT problem. We're asking folks, just even the smallest problem, just to put it in there, and it's going to get routed to Kathy's team. And I think we're talking about keeping this open all year round for possibly.
So there's always a mechanism for departments to communicate with IT on any kind of needs they have. That way IT can factor in how it's going to affect their budget. That's what we're looking for.
But I guess the culmination of this spiel, you know, gathering data is we're going to be able to build things. You know, folks can go in there and one person can enter all the information in instead of one person enters the information in. It gets channeled to another person who does more information, and we can build things like this. So capital plan, you know, we can do metrics.
And the summaries as well.
Absolutely.
Are
Yeah.
what I would like to see, and then something struck me when I like.
Keep in mind, you all, I mean, this is open, so you all can go in there and view all the requests.
That's great, so it's really like a road, you're showing the road to have something in there.
Absolutely.
So how does this work within the big budget? I mean, you're asking for 30,000 or 200,000. How do we know it's there? I mean, that's asking for the money, right?
Yeah, so on any individual project, you could go to it and see if you approved it, what date you approved it, what the vote was. Some of what y'all saw us go back and build like on Cox. It was the vote where the background documents. The other thing we really are aware of is historically, we have neither set priorities, so department directors put anything on that CIP and it stayed there, even if everybody in the room knew. We were never doing that. So for you all, you kept seeing a number that was probably bigger than what the actual projects we would have as a leadership team agreed needed to happen. And then it adds the capacity to calculate that cost out. So in our world now, as soon as the human service complex doors open, Clint's calculating when do they need a HVAC, when do they need a roof. So you all always can see long-term what projects are out there, which we just didn't do. I think y'all made decisions a lot of times, because that's what we do, on large capital projects, only on the impact of that year's budget versus how's it going to play out in the long term. So that's what we're trying to do.
And we would love, I don't want to speak for everybody, but we would love for you to go in and, play around with it and look at it. And use it as a tool when we're making decisions and stuff, so.
And it's a great financial planning tool for us, because then we can see where the funding source is going to be, whether or not this is something finance needs to start looking at as far as issuing debt, or if it's going to be funded out of VAGOs type stuff. So just having a place, one source to go to, because I would always be operating off of the CIP plan that I thought was the current plan, but come to find out we had since had been revising. So now it's really one place we can go to and see that at least we know where the status is, whether it's been to the board, whether this is just something that's still just way early planning phase. So it really, from the financial standpoint, is a great tool for us, so we can do some better financial planning.
As
So we
well,
can come back with
yeah.
recommendations to you all as how we can achieve this, how would we achieve it if this is what you wanted.
And it's time driven as well, as opposed to put a request in 19, and if it ends up on the plan for 2022, this allows us to go, the person can go in and update it. It's obviously going to cost change year to year, so.
Right, so every year when we were trying to update items, departments were doing new forms with conflicting information. And this way, it's one spot they can just go in and edit their information, resubmit it. You will see, so this looks very similar to the CIP that you normally see and adopt.
Just like this.
Yeah, so we're still working to give you that summary, but as Andy said, you'll get something that's already been reviewed. It's went through a process where budget and performance management have sat down and looked at projects, senior leadership team has looked at them, and it's not going to be a list of every single request that's come through.
So it's not going to be a wish list.
It's not going to be a wish list, it's going to be realistic,
Really good.
well reviewed, analyzed, feasible plan. So our next steps, we'll continue to use work sessions to provide you departmental program and budget information throughout the year, starting with IT today. Instead of in the past, you probably remember just having one or two sessions where it was really concentrated. You were hearing from many departments all in one day and trying to alleviate that and use your work sessions to bring you information all year long. We'll also gear up the operating budget development next month. So that begins in December with our office compiling salary and wage projections for the upcoming fiscal year. And then in January, departments will begin submitting their operating budget requests. And to into that, as I've already mentioned, we've been collaborating with performance management. So we are working on some trend data and other analytics to provide to departments to help them in submitting their operating budgets, and also provide that information to you as well, give you more insight into departments and their budgets. But we're really excited about that collaboration. And finally, line item detail, we'll continue to provide that to you as you've requested. We'll continue to refine how you want to see your budget summary. I know we talked about that a little bit in July. What format do you want? What needs to fall in the appropriate functional groupings? How do you want to see revenues and expenses? So we'll keep working on that and refining that as the year goes on. And finally, we want to talk budget with you. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to contact any of us here. And as I mentioned before, budget@buncombecounty.org. If you really don't know who to talk to, we've been publishing this on the external website as well. Send an email here, it goes to the entire budget office, and we'll follow up. So that, hopefully we stay within our time.
Great.
Thank you.
Any questions?
One, I don't know if this is, I think this is like, something to ask, I guess it's kind of budget related and audit related at the same time. So if we approve something, how do we know, say it's something important like, we're giving teacher assistants a raise.
Thank you.
Is it a function, could it be, or should it be, a function of audit? Make sure that those things are funded or report back to us, or to know, and we've heard smaller things, we've heard, I wonder if that got funded. I wonder if that pay raise happened, or, I wonder if, those things I just want to know what you were talking about, that you were like, bus
So
stop,
we don't have-
a bus
I
stop,
don't get the name,
a bus
I don't
stop,
see
in,
them.
just want to know, or whatever, or it, could be energy related, could be anything. When did that, it was important to us, when did it fund, and did it fund accurately?
Well, I think this will be the exact same. You can click on any project and see that one with the phases that they mentioned. Is it, where is it in the process, and is it complete, and what the final costs were. And one of the commitments you all asked of us early on is we're bringing back every capital. So when you talk about a capital project, we're bringing back the closeout of that to you all officially. You saw some of those in the last couple of weeks. In terms of the outside funding, like the schools, Tim and I are scheduled to meet with both systems in December, and those are the questions we're asking. That yes, this was the allocation, but these were the specific requests commissioners had within that, and how do we report that out to you all, report it back, which has not happened in the past. When we funded them, and you all been clear on what you expected to happen, but there was no official report back. So the chair had asked we meet with them, begin that process, and we are scheduled to do that.
So is there, under the changes with the new audit functions, is that one of the things that, under new auditing that will be done, is they'll be looking and seeing if that an amount is not more than what it should be, or if it's less, is there, trigger something, and are they checking that so that, we don't, not that we're doubting all that, but that we have full confidence that the monies are going where they're supposed to go, and it seems that needs to be a function of someone, an audit function.
It might fall a little bit outside of audit, but I think it falls, first of all, to me, about did I do what you instructed us to do in terms of managing the budget? And two, I think Board of Performance Management you know, part of what you're getting access to in this is budget to actuals, so you'll be able to see where we're expanding in a particular area. But I think you make a good point, like I don't remember, that was a little bit before I sat in this seat, but like with the bus shelters, I think that happened outside of budget in a meeting. So I think, like in a regular meeting where you all agreed you wanted to do it, it wasn't part of the budget process. So maybe we just need to make a commitment to develop a reporting mechanism back to you to anything you find in a meeting, so you're seeing regular updates, where it is in status and when it's complete. The things that happen outside the normal budget cycle, because you do and can allocate money all year long. And if I went back and watched the tapes and read the history on that, and I think that happened in a regular meeting where somebody brought up bus stops and the need for bus stops.
We had the whole community there with half their money. Yeah.
But we'll do it any way that works for you.
I mean, that just, that just came to my mind.
Yeah,
mainly
it's a
because
great-
Commissioner Carlson mentioned it the other day,
We'll just speak to the
but it was the paper, but it was, when I was driving over here, the raises kept, the teacher assistants kept popping in my head, and to make sure that they got what we had asked, or, if someone's supposed to get raises, then, and it's supposed to be for 200,000, if it's 300,000 or 250,000, who is audit watching that? Is somebody watching that within the budget? That's really all I'm talking about.
It's probably more a budget function, but when we come up with a better tool to report those things back to you, we probably can.
Well, and it's like, I think we approved a vehicle for Ashley Maine.
We did.
Yeah, I think, but, so have they gotten it?
Yes. So maybe we can add those to a running update that happens in written form, and then you can ask questions under county manager's update at every meeting. Like, here are the outstanding projects you assigned to us, and yes, the car was delivered. Yes, the new ambulances were delivered.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily wanting to know that everything that I have okayed or approved is being done. I'm just wondering within the audit or whatever it is, is someone checking that? They don't have to come back to me, and is that being checked to make sure? That's all I'm saying, is that if it's not, it should be, and it doesn't have to be a long conversation.
Right, that wouldn't normally be a function of audit, but, internal audit is to address any risks that the board considers to be important risks to address.
Right.
So if that is something that the board chose to have as part of the internal audit plan, part of the internal audit plan is, of the thousands of things we do, I wouldn't say that we would check everything that was approved in the massive county budget.
Right.
That it got funded, but certainly anything specifically passed outside the budget time or anything you specifically wanted looked at.
And I think
Internal
that,
audit doesn't actually do the controls, we would just look to see if the controls are functioning as they should.
Well, I think, in the past, we sadly assumed that what we said was going to happen, and now we've learned the hard way it didn't happen. So I agree with Joe, it doesn't have to be every little thing, but, and maybe if there were certain things within departments could just report to somebody rather than have it fall on. That makes sense?
but, I'm just saying that if there's $200,000 assigned to something, that $250,000 doesn't get assigned to, or that it gets assigned in the right place. It didn't have, people don't have to come back to me and tell me everyone as a commissioner or commissioner.
They know we're doing it.
Or if I was in charge of everything, all I would want to know is that position was there, and that position was totally impartial. That position was watchdogging for that, for me to know that if that came in higher, or it got diverted, or if teacher assistance pay got diverted somewhere else, I would want to know that.
We need to move on in just a second. So I have one thought on this topic. you know, of course, the audit should look at any kind of things that look unusual or out of the norms, but you know, but on the budget stuff, I would also, one concern is just, you know, we've got 2 great commissioners on there, but the rest of us aren't, so I think in some ways, these budget questions are gonna oftentimes be things, you know, the full commission's interested in, making sure are tracking. So, and we do have a lot of time set aside, to do these budget, you know, work sessions, so I think these will be great formats too, just to make sure we get all our questions answered too, and I would really encourage commissioners, if you have questions about, you know, hey, what's up with the bus shelters, or what's up with the, you know, the teacher pay, to just, you know, to just email the manager, and if it's something that maybe you just think only you'd be interested in, then, you know, you can just do it one-on-one, but I love to see the kind of flow of information around that stuff, so if people have questions, let's just, you know, let's just write them, put them down on paper and say, hey, manager, here's a question, and especially as we get further into the budget process, to just, you know, I think it's a great way to just, you know, get really clear answers about the status of different things we're not only thinking about funding, but that we funded in the previous year, and how they're, you know, how they're going over the course of the year.
I think the detail of the budget amendment that y'all changed,
Yeah, that's good.
and the fact there's not as much discretion when you all are given direction will clean a lot of that up too. And y'all are being very clear in your expectations, and we're capturing that in the new budget amendment document. But I think that's a great idea, channel questions and all this.
Yeah, I mean, we need to be careful about not kind of lobbying for funding over email, but in terms of just information requests, that's totally appropriate for commissioners to just put it in an email and send it around and ask for updates, either in these formats or just a written response.
Even like the format that I saw, where you said there's nothing going to be spent in 19, and there's yes in other areas. Then the yes, when it's done, could be a check. So,
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's constantly changing, and feedback, please give us feedback, because I think it's something we could probably use for project
I
management.
really like seeing what you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Great presentation. Thanks, Diane, and Autumn and Matt. Appreciate all of your contributions on that. Let's talk to IT about whatever they want to talk. Well, computers and stuff. Thanks.
You see on the lower right, and we're gonna wear our matching pocket protectors, but they won't wear the locations, so there's your IT. Okay. All right, I'm Kathy Brady. I've been the IT director for about a year, but I've been with the county since 1991, back when all of our business processes were dominated by paper. And now, of course, we have technology in absolutely every corner of the business that we support. We're going to talk to you today about what IT does in layman's terms and about the budget that supports our work. But I also want you to leave with an understanding what I feel our most important asset is, and that's the employees of IT. Having been in IT for as long as I have been, I'm more convinced than ever that technology cannot be successful without good employees to implement it. Okay. All right. So, having said that, one of my key goals is professional development of staff. Obviously, technology is changing constantly. We have to focus on our staff and provide them with resources to increase their knowledge. One of the things we've done is pilot a mentoring program. So we have David Thompson, who started with the county 16 years ago. He started as a service desk technician, entry-level position. He's now a senior network engineer. He's got a little gray in his hair, you can see there. And he wanted to do something to help the department internally. So we piloted a mentoring project, and he is mentoring Isaac Godfrey, who is now a service desk technician. He's been with the county for 3 years. And we set some tangible goals around the project, but when I checked in with David to see how it was going, what he said was most important to him was that he could not only share with Isaac how he has grown professionally, but he found out that they shared the same taste in music. So we created a personal connection and a professional connection there. And we're trying to do some things to change our corporate culture within IT. We want to become a team. We don't want to be separate employees, heads down, working on things. We want to be part of each other. So we're doing things outside of work on our own time. We're getting together, we're going to ball games, we're getting together for music events. We're getting to know each other as people. We meet our
each other's partners and their children, and we talk about our non-work lives, because our lives matter. It impacts how we function and perform at work, so we need to have an understanding of our employees. Another thing we've done is we've created a professional development team within IT to focus our resources on how can we manage each and every one of our employees, make sure they're getting the right training and the right development. All right, so to dig into the details, there are 3 divisions within IT. The Operational Services Division is led by Vance Bell. He's been with the county for 16 years. That's our infrastructure, network, and our hardware. Software Services Division, we support vendor systems, we create custom systems, and we tie all of them together through integration services. That is Eric Grau in the blue shirt. If you see him looking at his phone, it's because his wife is going to go in labor any minute.
Well, more next week, we'll say.
He was sure he wasn't going to be here today, and I was going to have to do his part of the presentation, so thank you, Sally, for making me. And then I'm in the process of creating a 3rd division to IT, and that's around security and standards. I don't think I have to tell any of you about the cybersecurity issues that have been in the news and how important it is that we have a strong security posture within the county. So what we are trying to do is create a 3rd division to create audit and oversight processes, and that will be led by Chris Wallace, who's been with the county for 5 years. So we're going to start with Vance, right?
Good afternoon. I think I know most everybody in here. I know Commissioner Pryor, and nice to meet the rest of you. Commissioner Presley, I've never actually met you, but I've seen you race many nights on Friday night. Full disclosure, I pull for your dad. Just so you know. But as Kat said, my name's Vance Bell. I'm in the Operational Services Division. I'm over that group. And if I could sum up operational services in one sentence, it would be the building blocks for IT. I feel like our group, that's what our group is. Network, that's what the data rides across. Storage, that's where the data resides and sits and kind of lives. And the servers, that's what delivers that type of information to you. And then support. So the breaks, you call us and we help you. We try to be very proactive with that as much as we can, but sometimes we can't. But that's what I would describe Operations Service Division as, is the building blocks. And what I'm going to try to do is go through my group and really try to give you an idea of what our allocated dollars transition to and turn into in terms of how it impacts not only our department but the community. So with that, one of our core principles, we have several guiding principles that I've asked my group to abide by and go through, and when they're making decisions, consciously think about these things. But the top of the list is highest availability of resources. If our end users and our citizens can't get to our resources, then we're not doing our job. So that's the utmost thing that we keep in mind. So with that, we have 3 groups in my division. Radio is the part I'll talk about. They are responsible for the public safety radio system. We have 2 full-time staff that maintain that system. We meet regularly with key stakeholders, law enforcement, EMS, fire, those groups, to make sure they're getting what they need out of the system. We were able to implement the system at a significant savings by becoming what's called a showcase site. I like to tell you guys, we obviously live in a mountainous region. That's not so good for radio. It's kind of hard to get down in the valleys and the hollers and all that stuff like that. It's challenging when it comes to radio. So we've had people from Finland and Switzerland come and actually visit our site to see how we've done this. And by doing that and agreeing to be that kind of showcase site, we were able to save some money on the implementation, which I think was really, really good. So I'm going to take my magnifying glass and we'll look at radio. Little hint. So we have 17 radio towers that cover the 660 square miles of Buncombe County. And we have 40 agencies that rely on the system, fire, police, and medical, those folks. There's 40 agencies out there. There are over 3,000 devices that actually connect to those towers and talk and do all that stuff. And last year there were 2.2 million times somebody pushed the button to talk on the radio system. That's a lot of talking. So they really rely on that system, and our guys do a really good job of keeping it up. I just want to give you guys an idea what what those numbers are, so.
Well, these 17 towers are owned by the county, Mr. County.
Not
assets.
fully, some are not, some we lease. We try to do that where we can. Depends on the cost analysis.
So if a private company has a cell tower up, we can attach our stuff to it.
Ideally, right, ideally if we say we have a dead spot somewhere and somebody has a tower that we can locate on and gain some coverage, we don't have to support the infrastructure, we pay a small fee for it to locate on it, but there's some places where that wasn't possible and we did have to build. The next group I want to talk about is our service desk group. They are they're the first point of contact for any kind of IT-related request for service. They handle not only the 8 to 5 calls, but they serve in a 24/7 capacity rotation in terms of dealing with Sheriff's Department, EMS, HHS on-call folks, get a lot of those calls. So they rotate that to serve those departments that aren't just working 8 to 5. There's a lot of our employees that don't. So they're the ones who handle that. They're broken up into 3 groups. We have the help desk group. They're the ones when you call for assistance. They're the ones who actually answer the call. There's 3 of those folks. We have the dispatch escalation folks. There are 6 of those guys and ladies, and they're the ones who do the actual rotation. And they handle the calls that can't be handled really quick or need to actually go on site to do. Then we have a deployment group made of 2 people, and they handle the life cycle of equipment, receiving, disposal, inventory, that type of stuff. A little bit about these guys. They support over 3,700 people. Now, that's not just Buncombe County employees, that's embedded contractors like Child Support Enforcement, RHA, those types of groups. We have vendors, we have public safety users, APD, AFR, all those folks rely on our systems, all the way down to an attorney who needs to get in and out of the judicial complex over here with their access card. We have to give them a card to get in and out of those buildings. So take all that universe of people, and it's about 3,700 people. On average, we do about 18,000 requests for service a year in terms of, hey, I need some help, whatever that is. That's a lot of tickets. And annually, we deploy about 12,000 devices and keep up with a lot of devices. Now that's not just computers, that's your monitor, your iPad, your cell phone, your desk phone, mice, keyboard, all that stuff we got to keep track of, and if something breaks, we got to replace it and fix it. So annually, we do about 12,000 different devices. One thing we try to do is make sure we keep up with how our folks are doing. We do random surveys to our customers, and we ask 4 questions. Did we resolve the issue? Was there adequate time spent on the issue? Was the technician professional and courteous? And how was the level of communication? And our feedback is overwhelmingly positive with these that we get back. If I'm having a bad day, I'll just sit down and read these because we get a lot of really good feedback. And these are just a couple that we've heard from the Sheriff's Office and from the Health and Human Services, but we're really proud of our folks. They do a really, really good job. So I'm going to highlight them for a second. The last group I'll talk about is infrastructure. This is made up of 6 folks, and they're the ones who probably don't see a ton. They're on the back end doing the storage and the network and the servers and that type of stuff. But they're responsible for designing and maintaining the fundamental solutions that allow our users to get the information they need. Give you some numbers around what they do. Try to move quick. I know you guys got somewhere to be. So we have 78 unique locations that have some level of network connectivity back in the county. That's for all the way, like HHS, big building, all the way up Lake Julian, Fairview Library, those types of places that we have some level of network connectivity. As far as storage goes, on our servers, we have about 270,000 hours of stored camera footage that we have to maintain and keep track of. If you took all the data that we have, everything that we have that we maintain, keep track of, and you burnt them to CD, you burnt that data to CD, it'd be 1.1 million CDs. And if you stack those CDs on top of each other, it'd be taller than Mount Mitchell. A lot of data. A lot of data. And last year, our infrastructure received and delivered 1.5 million phone calls to our folks, and I'm sure some of them wish some of those calls didn't come in. A few more numbers. We have over 350 servers. 2,500 workstations that we maintain, support, keep track of. We received, there were over 8 million emails sent to buncombecounty.org email addresses last year. That's not what we sent, that's just what we got. So that's quite a few emails. Good luck reading those. And we have over 8 million documents in our document management system. So lots of reading to do between those two things. Real quick, I'll go over a capital project that we're working on. This is a real quick, rough and dirty representation of our infrastructure. We have our data center in the middle, and we have a redundant data center down here below, and redundant links to them. But you'll notice if something were to happen, and to that middle data center, people that were sitting there 45 or just they can't go anywhere, they can't get anywhere. So the root of this particular project is to really increase our resiliency and our reliability. Like I said, that's real quick and dirty. This is what it really looks like. That's really, actually that was probably a little more complex than that now, but this is where we're trying to get to. So now we have the 2 data centers, and they are fully redundant between the buildings. They have redundant internet connectivity at those buildings. And yeah, this is where we're trying to get to. Part of that project too will be security. So this is our current, the way currently things are set up in the zone. Real quick and dirty, if this particular server right here got compromised or got hacked, somebody could go and talk to all those servers. That's the way those zones work. What we're trying to do is work to mitigate that risk. And now we take our servers and, for lack of a better term, we put them in like little Ziploc bags. They can only talk to what's in their bag, right? So now if this guy gets compromised, he can only hurt those guys. He can only talk to those guys. So a big part of our job is mitigating the risk. And additionally, a couple weeks ago there was a conference in town, the Neighborhood Conference, and they had a senior vice president of a multi-billion-dollar company was here to give the keynote. He described this exact solution as the next generation of security. We planned this out, started implementing this about a year ago. So I feel like we're really on track to where we need to be in terms of our infrastructure and our security. Real quick, last slide for me. We work really, really hard to be green and be conscious of dollars that we're allocated. We are highly virtualized, and a real quick and easy concept around virtualization is today's servers are big and they have tons of resources available to them. So if I bought one server and just did one thing with it, I'm wasting a lot of resources. So Commissioner Farr, if you bought a 10,000 square foot house and you live there by yourself, it's awesome, but probably not that efficient, right? So what we do is we take that house and we break it up into like 20 apartments. So now I got 20 people that can live in that one big 10,000 square foot house, and that's basically what virtualization does for us. So with virtualization, instead of me buying 315 servers at that $1.2 million cost, I buy it at that 189, I buy 22 servers because of that ratio, right? So my acquisition costs, I think, over $1.1 million just when I buy stuff, right? Annually, every single year I save $200,000 in heating and cooling and power and that kind of stuff. And because of our refreshment cycle, our refresh cycle, we refresh every 5 years hardware. I save $2 million every 5 years, and that just keeps going. We keep saving that money every time we do that. And we're actually able to save a little bit more than that because we had to buy fewer servers because they're better than they used to be 5 years before. So take up a lot of time. I need to let Eric talk or the baby, but thank you for listening. Try to be quick.
All right, we're going to fly through this. I know we're a bit of a timeline. So Software Service Division, I'm Eric Brown. I'm in Software Service Division. Been here for about 3 years. So I would love to talk to you guys for hours on this subject. I'm a little bit biased and passionate about it, but I'm going to get 10 minutes. So software support is a big kind of umbrella term. There's lots of things about what we do to support software. We'll get into a little bit of detail, but again, you can follow up with any questions at any point. Kathy talked about integrations and automations. Integrations when systems talk to each other. We do a lot of that. We'll see a little bit of that. Data expertise. We have awesome analysts here in the county. Some of that stuff starts with the foundation of the databases and the systems that we have. we have that expertise to help the analysts get the data out of those systems, and they can run with it and do some of the cool things that they do. Our division, the software services division, is broken into custom development, content management, GIS, and vendor systems. Although I will say, for the most part, these very much kind of blend together. Kind of everyone has to have a certain amount of responsibility for all of those expertise, automation, integration, and support. For example, our GIS team actually manages our tax systems, help out with board of elections stuff, et cetera. So there's a lot of cross-training going on. Government software, Kathy mentioned 21 years ago was all paper. We are very much intertwined now with technology and software. By and large, pretty much every department has some amount of software that we support. Of course, like the tax one, maybe a traditional big one, they have lots of software, whether it's appraisals or collecting taxes or GIS stuff. It goes on and on. They have tons of software. But even the small division like solid waste, we manage their wasteworks software as you do to process credit cards and calculate how much a load is for the dump and all that. So it really is everywhere. So don't try to read this slide. This is an example here. So this is actually kind of a simplified rendering of our real property systems. So it kind of all starts maybe with 911 addressing. The data kind of flows through all these different systems. We have registered deeds represented here, tax, permitting, public GIS, on and on. So what this allows us to do, well, I like this slide for two reasons. One, it looks impressive, and it is. But two, those four groups I talked about, GIS, custom maps, vendor support, and content management, they're all represented here. Same with that same thing, the integrations, the automations, the data expertise. This is all in this picture. Just a quick example, if you look maybe in the upper right corner, you see Excel. Excel is our permitting system. So what happens after every time a permit is complete, there's an integration into this CAMA system, which is our property appraisal system. So now the appraisers get in their queue, hey, I have a building that had an addition to it, it's now in my queue, it maybe needs to be reevaluated for property tax system. So having all these integrations really allows two things. One, efficiency, and it's much less prone for errors. So we're going to kind of take out some of the manual processes of having to go into multiple systems and bring data over from here over there, you have to key that in, et cetera, is possible for errors. So this is my presentation. It's going to take a little bit of a 180. Kathy talked about this 10,000-foot overview. And I had this whole presentation around the vendor systems and the content management and custom dev. I was going to talk about how vendor support, we need to stay ahead of, look at the contract for technical considerations, really have a business relationship with the vendor, see, really evaluate where their company is going. Maybe that's going to impact our software refresh cycle for them. Vance stole like 8 million documents, but that's content management. Our custom apps teams and all the integrations they do with all these third parties. But to be honest, it was kind of long-winded and pretty boring. So instead, I'm going to actually go down to a micro level. I'm going to talk about a specific project. It's easy to understand, but I think it's a good representation of the kinds of things that we do. So this one, it's called the deed transfer project, or bridging the physical divide. So for those who, just a little background, so when a piece of real property is going to change ownership, you have to transfer the deed from the buyer to the seller to the buyer, excuse me. But there's a gotcha in this, and that is that if there's any taxes due on the deed, then on the property, then they won't go. So the good old days, these were both located at 35 Woodfin, right across the street here. And the registered deeds employee would literally take the unstamped deed with the citizen over to the tax department and put a stamp on it, and then they'd come back and process the deed. So it's pretty straightforward. Administrative decisions, we created this physical divide, right? And so a bit of an inconvenience for the citizen. They have to travel 1.6 miles round trip just to get that stamp and have the tax department look up that information. Some numbers about how long that would take them. So again, it's pretty straightforward, simple little process, but essentially what we did is we created a little app that has a cube and some notifications built in. The citizen will come up to the registered deeds, they'd scan that deed in, it would notify the tax department into their queue, they'd look it up in the system, enter in the information, send it back to the registered deeds, and the citizen can go along their way. So, remember this? Well, this is a cool one that we actually got to like kind of measure some of the impact pretty easily. So on average, this saves 90 round trips. Pretty simple solution. 145 miles distance, and in a single world, this is a nice kind of friendly solution to the workers and citizens of the environment. So a simple little project, I think it had a true impact, right? It's kinds of things that we do on a pretty day in and day out basis. So we get a lot of these kinds of requests, and this is my last slide. I'm going to make this somewhat brief, but we have this thing called the solutions cycle and the solutions management team. So a department would come in with requests for an idea or a problem they have. And what we do is we go out and we do some requirements gathering. We try to really understand what the objectives are. We have a whole template of 50 or so questions that we ask about security and do they need to access things remotely and all those types of situations. We develop a timeline with the costs. And then we bring it to the solutions management team. And one of the things that we really try to focus on first is can we leverage an existing system? So this allows us to repurpose something, save that cost and having to go out and find another solution. Then we would look for maybe an open source something, or maybe a vendor solution required, and then lastly, maybe we have to build something. And that is kind of the order that we would like to do. If we can leverage something that already exists, great. If we have to build something that's a little more time and intensive, maybe it has a single purpose. But, yeah, that's the gist. This does allow us to really have efficient uses of our resources, fiscal responsibility, good stuff. I know that was short and sweet, but I hope you got a somewhat of an idea of the software services.
Yeah, I'm out with this so much. But what happens to all the old computers and iPads and all that?
Computers, we try to sell on gov deals. If they're still in working condition, we take the hard drive out, sanitize them, put all the data off, that kind of stuff, because of what he's getting ready to go over in terms of security and compliance. We try to sell those through gov deals. Mike does a great job with that, Mike Stavery. If it's junk, we recycle it. But yeah, we try to get every dollar we can out of that stuff.
So mine's actually going to be even shorter. As Kathy mentioned, this is a kind of a new initiative for IT. Not that security hasn't been a focus, but traditionally we've been very reactive. It's been spread out across departments, so we're taking a more proactive approach and centralizing some dedicated staff. So this is just kind of a quick what is security, what we're doing, why we need to do it. Again, it's a new division, so I split this out into 4 items. The data that we have to protect, the threats we need to protect it from, the methods we're going to use to do that, and then some statistics on why we need to do that. So the first is what is cybersecurity? So the definition is that it's the body of technologies, processes, and practices designed to protect networks, devices, programs, and data from attack, damage, or unauthorized access. So this is the data that we have. This is PII, or personally identifiable information, PHI, protected health information that HHS deals with, FBI, criminal justice information, or CJI, and then we also take credit card payment card processing at certain locations, so we have to protect the PCI DSS standards. So this is kind of a lot of information, but social security numbers, birth dates, security questions, mother's maiden names, account numbers, medical records, diagnosis codes, stuff like that. So we're responsible for keeping all of that information contained internally and not getting out into the wrong hands. So some of the threats we face are spam, viruses. We have technology solutions in place that prevent most of these from getting through. They get stopped. If they come through an email, they get stopped through an email firewall. There's antivirus in the machine that finds things. So these are things that we can protect against with technological solutions. Social engineering and phishing are things that require education. So one of the big things we're doing is a security awareness program on training users on how to recognize these things and what to do when they do pick up on them. This was an easy analogy on how to protect data. If you think about it in terms of how you would keep intruders out of your house or things you do to protect what's in your house, one thing you do is lock the door. So in that case, in IT, we have a firewall in place. That stops people at the front door. Install an alarm. So these are detection systems that pick up on intruders or trying to get into the system, and they alert staff. Put in cameras. These are monitoring systems that watch what people are doing. Buy a safe. So this is encrypting your data. And then you hire security guards as the final step, or dogs, for security dogs. So, and that's kind of what we're doing now, is we're getting this dedicated security staff. We've been collecting all this data, but unless we're alerted to a problem, we don't review it. This is kind of focused on being able to have staff that can continually review that data, see what's going on, and make sure things are being done properly. Make sure people aren't accessing data they shouldn't be accessing. And then this is the reason we do that. So these are some small statistics. The first one's on phishing. 23% of recipients open a phishing message, 11 click on an attachment. That means there's about 30 people in here. If I send an email to all 30 of you, 6 of you are going to open it. 3 of you are probably going to click on the link. And there's a good chance 1 or 2 is going to log in and give me their password. And that's just, that's the way it is. We can educate people all day about this. The issue is people get in a hurry. They forget to check things. So we also need the technological solutions in place to prevent that as kind of a second step. 256 days is the average it takes to discover a malicious attack. So if we're alerted to a problem, we find it today, there's a good chance that it's been out sending up data, it's been on the network for almost a year. Average cost per lost or stolen record is $170. And then in 2016, the amount of reported data loss was 4.2 billion records. That's global, it's not just in the US, but for reference, the number at that in 2014 was about 85 million. And so that's kind of the quick overview of security. Again, this is one of those things we could talk about for an hour, but we had 5 minutes. So.
Chris just emphasized why people are still an important part of technology. People are still a factor. So the budget. Real high level, we have 53 employees and a budget of $11.17 million. Within that budget, we hold all of the software licensing and maintenance costs for the whole county, and that is because we are the people who manage those relationships. We pay those bills, we manage the contracts. So it's not really our money. We're working on behalf of the rest of the county. About 97% of our budget is directly attributable to supporting the departments. Our budget is split just about equally between salaries and operating. We have, let's go to the next slide. In operating, we have just under $5.5 million. We budget with contingency in mind. We never know when something's going to happen. Something's going to fail, we need to replace something, there's a new need that we have to address. In 2016, when Tim was IT director, he did add a line item called infrastructure refresh. And the purpose of that was to allow us to replace things that in our infrastructure that just absolutely have to be replaced without going out for capital. So for example, this year in that infrastructure line item, we will be paying for a replacement of all of our wireless technology in every building throughout the county. It needs to be upgraded, it's old, and we'll be using that money instead of going after capital on that sort of thing. Overall, our operating expense budget is mostly hardware and software. That 17% includes things like the connectivity costs for the entire county, the maintenance on the radio towers that we do own. So that 17% is also things that are supporting the county. Of that other, the things that we actually have discretionary control over are things like training and contracted services, and that amount makes up about 7.8% of the budget. So for example, this year out of contracted services, we engaged with an external security consulting firm to do a countywide HIPAA risk assessment. We wanted to know where we stood from a perspective of our HIPAA data and partnered with HHS heavily on that, but it also reached out to our Blue Cross data and finance and personnel. And our salaries and benefits, we're just under 5.7 million on budgeted salaries and benefits this year. You'll see kind of a weird trend. We're going down. In 15 is when we had to have several retirements. We had payouts, annually payouts and incentives. But whenever anyone leaves and they're at a higher level, we use that opportunity to review all of our positions, and we try to have existing employees take on higher level work and backfill at a lower level when we can. We currently still carry some people in our salary budget who are getting retirement incentives and their health insurance, but that will go down as those retirement incentives hang out. So that's the 10,000-foot view. As you can hear, the scary thing in our world is cybersecurity. The good thing in our world is the employees. And you know, the IT employees are not just staff in the county, they're members of the community. And I think Jim and Andy would agree when I describe our staff as passionate. They've certainly been passionate and have exported social workers through technology over the past decade, and you can say that about really all areas of IT and how our staff functions. So, any questions?
I do, just about email. It probably started last February or March when we started the Isaac Coleman initiative, and there were a number of people on the email. But for whatever reason, that email never goes to where it's meant to go. It comes up as absolute gibberish.
It is a really odd thing. I don't know how to describe it. It's like somebody hijacked the complaint.
So are you saying it's an email that comes from us?
No, when we send, when we send an email to the group, it comes back as absolute gibberish. And I think a couple of times, like meeting times were changed. It's very odd.
Lisa, is that something I could look at with you?
I can show it to you.
Okay.
Maybe we can create a meeting together and see what happens, because it's very odd.
Okay. All right.
Anything else? All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good.
Congratulations, sir.
Yes.
That's exciting.
it's a boy.
That's my baby girl out there.
Oh, yeah, there's Eric and his wife and his daughter in the picture at the ball game.
We're done. Gotta set up for